Chapter 1161, The Fearless. By mid to late August, autumn had not yet officially arrived, but the unexpected drizzle and accompanying chill made the villagers of St. Catchpole feel as though late autumn had come early. The sky was a blanket of haze, casting a somber mood over the village. In the east, near an old, gnarled locust tree, stood a crooked three-story wooden house. Egwene stood at the door, her gaze fixed anxiously on the distant white Stoat Mountain. In spring and summer, the sight of green grass swaying in the breeze across the mountains was a refreshing spectacle. However, under the rain, the grass appeared suffocatingly dark, its blades bent under the weight of the water, adding to the oppressive atmosphere. Egwene's eyes, frozen with worry, shifted to a rice field at the mountain's base, equally drooping under the autumn rain, deepening her melancholy. Dark clouds raced overhead, driven by the strong wind, causing the old locust tree to sway wildly. Yet Egwene remained still, her attention fixed on the rice fields, until a sudden burnt smell invaded her nostrils, jolting her from her thoughts. Her expression changed as she rushed to the kitchen. Hiss! Egwene's mind was clouded with panic as she grabbed the hot iron pot, burning her hands severely. In her distress, she glanced around and spotted an old wand, adorned with feathers and covered in dust, resting on the windowsill by the stove. Without hesitation, she seized the wand and waved it. Boom! With a loud explosion, the heavy pot lid shot into the air, embedding itself in the ceiling, while the burnt stew spilled over the stove, hissing as it met the flames. "What are you doing, Egwene?" A man with wet hair and clothes emerged from the fireplace on the opposite wall. The chaotic scene left the middle-aged man, with his dark skin and notably thick knuckles, momentarily stunned. Regaining his composure, he strode to the stove, using a rag to protect his hand as he righted the fallen pot, salvaging the remaining stewed potatoes. He examined the burnt bottom of the pot in the dim light and frowned. "I lost my mind," Egwene admitted, guilt-ridden. "I was just trying to get the pot off with my wand. Sorry, John. I think I ruined our lunch." "It's no big deal," John replied, taking a deep breath and offering Egwene a reassuring smile. "There's enough left for us to eat." Glancing at the pot lid embedded in the ceiling, he added, "I'll have time this afternoon to fix the second floor and that pesky roof." Egwene nodded slightly, tossing the wand back onto the windowsill and wiping her hands on her greasy apron. "Have a seat. I can clean this up quickly." John nodded, retrieving a pipe from the pocket of his loose trousers. The pipe was worn from the calluses on his large hands. After a few puffs, he exhaled a cloud of smoke. He strolled to the door, gazing at the wind and rain enveloping the world, his eyes lingering on the landscape beneath White Stoat Mountain. His dark face mirrored a hint of Egwene's melancholy. "By the way, where's Bona? Is she upstairs?" John asked, turning to his wife, who was busy in the kitchen. "Before the rain started, she went up the hill to play with the Lovegood kid. Bona likes that kid," Egwene replied. "Luna?" John pondered, a hint of confusion in his voice. "But doesn't she go to Hogwarts?" "It's summer vacation, John," Egwene reminded him, noticing the worry in his eyes. She paused for a moment. "The Lovegoods are good people, John. They'll treat Bona to lunch. Besides, they won't look down on people like us." The last few words were so faint that they could barely be heard, but John understood what his wife was trying to say. A sinister look flickered in his eyes as he raised his voice, his expression clouded with displeasure. "It's not certain yet. You know, Bona is only 6 years old. She still has a chance." "Oh, of course, that's what I thought," Egwene replied quickly. In the dimly lit room, silence settled between them. Egwene brought a rather unappetizing lunch to the table, while John washed his hands in the rainwater dripping from the eaves, wiping them casually on his coat before sitting down. The stew, though plentiful, was overcooked, salty, and bitter, making it difficult to swallow without complaint. Neither of them was in the mood to enjoy the meal. After hastily filling her stomach, Egwene went to the stove to make a cup of tea for her husband. But John seemed oblivious to her efforts, his gaze fixed on White Stoat Mountain, which loomed as a massive shadow in the increasingly heavy rain. Seeing her husband so preoccupied, Egwene pursed her lips, her already cloudy eyes darkening further. She understood what was troubling him. "Sorry, the workshop is not open yet," John muttered, almost as if speaking to himself. "How could that be?" Egwene asked. though her tone lacked surprise. The Daily Prophet said that although the duel between Atticus Blaine and the mysterious man destroyed Diagon Alley, it didn't affect the city. That has nothing to do with it. John suddenly raised his voice, tapping the table with his thick knuckles. It's Mr. Greengrass's problem. The Ministry of Magic has issued a wanted order for him, claiming he's a Death Eater of you-know-who and that he participated in the Diagon Alley War. Egwene's eyes reflected her genuine concern. But what does this have to do with the workshop? Could it be? Her voice grew shrill. Just because the Ministry thinks Mr. Greengrass is a Death Eater, they shut down the Broomworks? Not the Ministry. John didn't want to burden his wife with more worries, but his anger got the better of him. The Greengrass family shut it down themselves. A head of the family explained that the Ministry's wanted order severely damaged their reputation and the workshops. Many orders were canceled, and the workshop couldn't continue operating. It had to close indefinitely, with a reopening date to be announced later. John gritted his teeth, clenching his fists. Not only the Broom Workshop, but also the Crucible Workshop, where the Ciel family boys work, has been shut down. The manager gave the same reason. The only workshop in that industrial zone unaffected is the Learning Machine Workshop. Despite understanding the gravity of the situation, John's words still sent Egwene into a panic. "Nana," she stammered, staring at her husband, whose eyes burned with anger. Clang. "The Ministry must give us an explanation." John suddenly slammed the table, his tone resolute. "The Ministry?" Egwene was puzzled. "But you said, we can't reach the lords of those noble pure-blood families." John's face was set in determination. "We can only turn to the Ministry of Magic. I don't care about power struggles or evil. Regardless of who the Minister of Magic is, whether it's Blaine or the mysterious man, I just want to live a decent life. But since the Ministry started the war and made it impossible for the workshop to continue, they must take responsibility. I can tell you, Egwene, we are already planning." "You are planning?" Egwene grasped John's rough hand, tears welling in her eyes. "Are you going to go against the Ministry of Magic and Mr. Blaine, John? This is too much for you to handle." End of this chapter. Chapter 1162, Decent. I have no intention of going against the Ministry of Magic or Mr. Blaine, John exclaimed, slamming the table as he glared at his wife, Egwene. "Don't you understand, Egwene? The land we have is barely enough to keep our family from starving, but it can't improve our lives. I need a job, but I have no other skills. I can only do work related to brooms. I just... Seeing the fear in Evan's eyes, John regained his composure. His broad shoulders slowly relaxed, and his expression softened. "I just want to continue my work. You also want Bona to have a decent life in the future, don't you?" Outside, the rain poured relentlessly, washing mud and sand over the cobblestone road in front of their home. "But what are you planning to do?" Egwene asked, her brown eyes misty with concern. "Promise me, John, don't do anything dangerous. Bona and I can't live without you." "Rest assured," John said, pulling Egwene into a gentle embrace, patting her back so she wouldn't see the worry in his eyes. "You know I'm no fool, Egwene. I won't wield a shovel or a broomstick to duel with the Ministry's enforcers or wizards like Mr. Blaine. I'm just voicing my opinion, hoping the Ministry will pay more attention to us poor folk." Egwene clasped her husband's back with her slender fingers, her brows slightly furrowed and her lips tense. They stood together at the door for a long time, but the rain showed no sign of stopping. A heavy rain before the autumn harvest meant their yield would be reduced. Looking at the world shrouded in thick fog, Egwene's worry deepened. "Maybe I should go get Bona back. I hope she won't cause any trouble for Mr. Lovegood and Luna." "You just said?" John's eyebrows twitched slightly. "Are the Lovegoods nice people?" "That's right," Egwene replied, blinking at her husband. When the weather was fine, Mr. Lovegood and his daughter would go fishing for painted squid in that little river over there, and I'd often see them while I was doing the laundry. Luna is willing to play with Bona, and she gives Bona little gadgets she makes herself. Beer bottle cap necklaces and the like. They're a bit strange, but very interesting. When Luna went to Hogwarts, Mr. Lovegood would stay home writing articles, occasionally taking walks by the river for inspiration. Sometimes when he ran into me, he'd buy fresh vegetables from me. Oh, and once in the summer, he used magic to help me water the fields. Is that so? John frowned. But I haven't heard you mention that. I thought I did, John, and more than once, Egwene said, reaching out to caress her husband's cheek lovingly. But you were exhausted when you came home from work every day. When I was telling you this, you were already dozing off. John remained silent, hiding his guilt. So, when Egwene mentioned picking up Bona again, John hesitated. Would it be possible for Mr. Lovegood and his daughter to let you and Bona stay there for a night? Stay? Actually, here's the thing, John said, turning his head away to avoid his wife's questioning gaze. I invited the 2 boys from the CL family and some of my friends over to drink in the evening, just to talk about our stress, but they might drink so much that they can't walk, so... I think, Egwene said, not pressing further, but looking into John's eyes with hesitation. Mr. Lovegood and Luna will welcome you. But who will cook for you? Oh, we can manage, John replied, visibly relieved. Egwene nodded. After changing into clean clothes on the 3rd floor, she returned to the 1st floor to find her husband tidying up the living room. The sight left her momentarily dazed as she stood at the bottom of the stairs. For a moment, she hesitated, but when she regained her composure, she remained silent. Instead, she went to the kitchen, gathered fresh cucumbers, tomatoes, and spinach into a basket, and then walked over to the fireplace. From a dusty niche, she retrieved a small cloth bag, weighing it thoughtfully in her hand. We need to get some flu powder, John, she said, pursing our lips. I will, John replied, glancing up. But with Diagon Alley destroyed, can we still buy things there? The Ministry of Magic has temporarily set up a vacant lot next to the original Diagon Alley. The merchants are now selling their goods from tents, she explained. John, panting from his efforts, continued to vigorously scrub the floor as he responded to his wife's questions. Egwene nodded, opened the bag, pinched some powder, and tossed it into the fireplace. Leaning into the green flames, she called out, "Oh, I'm so sorry to bother you, Mr. Lovegood. May I come over and talk?" John watched as his wife visibly relaxed after hearing something from the other side. Her body leaned further into the fireplace until she completely disappeared in the flames. John stood there, staring at the fireplace. About 10 minutes passed, but Egwene and Bona still hadn't returned. He sighed with relief, knowing that the kind-hearted Mr. Lovegood must have agreed to let Egwene and Bona stay at his house for the night. John hadn't rested all afternoon. He had climbed onto the 3rd-floor roof in the pouring rain to replace broken tiles with wooden boards. Immediately afterward, he repaired the 1st-floor ceiling, which had been damaged earlier when Yuen was cooking at noon. He spent the rest of his time meticulously cleaning the living room and the adjoining kitchen. He lay on the ground, wiping the muddy wooden floor piece by piece with a rag until the unsightly black spots were gone. During this process, he also replaced several floorboards and used a special insecticide to treat the ground beneath them. However, he was careful not to disturb the spotted spiders too much, fearing they might destroy the house's foundation in retaliation. John didn't overlook any hidden corners on the 1st floor, including the niche above the fireplace, the grimy stove, and the windowsill beside it. By the time he finished, the 1st floor of his house was completely transformed. Although it still lacked a polished appearance, it was much tidier than the Weasley family's living room outside the village. Yet, there was no joy in John's eyes. Instead, he appeared uneasy. His gaze swept over every corner of the living room and kitchen, worried that some dirt might have been missed. Suddenly, John noticed a wand on the windowsill, its feathers sticking out. This wand had been in his house for nearly half a century, but had never cast a single spell. "Waste," John muttered, looking dejected. He quickly grabbed the wand and tossed it into the neatly stacked firewood. But before he could turn away completely, he lunged back at the firewood, retrieving the wand with great effort from between the logs. "For Bona's sake, she loves watching you blow up," he muttered, placing the wand into a cupboard drawer. "Oh my God," John exclaimed, finally taking a moment to look outside. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, the gray, wet sky had turned dark, and the annoying daytime rain had ceased. Stars twinkled behind thin clouds. The old clock on the wall told John the exact time. He didn't dare delay any longer, and rushed upstairs. After cleaning the house, it was time to tidy himself up. He couldn't meet that respectable gentleman in his current state. Compared to his meticulousness in cleaning the living room, he now had to focus on preparing himself. John was rather careless about his personal hygiene. He spent less than 5 minutes in the bathroom. After quickly changing into a clean shirt and jeans, he rushed downstairs, still drying his hair with a towel. As he leaped down the stairs, barely landing on his feet, the fireplace in the kitchen suddenly erupted into flames. From the brilliant emerald green fire, which glowed more intensely than a candlestick's flame, emerged a man. He wore a black bowler hat, an elegantly tailored tuxedo, and shiny black leather shoes. Perched on his nose were a pair of gold-rimmed square glasses, and a gentle smile graced his lips. End of this chapter. Chapter 1163, The Orator. As Atticus Blaine emerged gracefully from the fireplace, John felt his breath catch in his throat. His hands fidgeted awkwardly, unsure of where to rest them to convey the respect he felt. There was no doubt that this elegantly dressed man was a true gentleman. John had spent 7 years working in the Greengrass family's broom workshop and had encountered many influential figures. He had met foreign clients, Ministry of Magic tax officials, the young heirs of the Greengrass family, and even Mr. Greengrass himself on several occasions. Yet none of them possessed the refined demeanor of the gentleman standing before him. "I assume you must be Mr. John Cena, correct?" The middle-aged gentleman's slightly hoarse voice was captivating. What thrilled John even more was that such a distinguished man addressed him as Sir. "I am. Oh, I mean, you can just call me John, sir." John's heart raced, and his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Ah, John, I hope my visit hasn't inconvenienced you. The Charles brothers spoke highly of your trustworthiness," Atticus Blaine remarked. John straightened his posture and replied with conviction, "Of course, Mr. Blaine, I am completely loyal to our cause." "I have every confidence in you, John," Atticus said, removing his hat and extending his hand for a handshake. In his excitement, John failed to notice the fleeting hint of mockery in Atticus's eyes. Atticus surveyed John's home with interest, easily discerning that it had been meticulously cleaned. John stood beside him, feeling as if he were a soldier under inspection. Atticus's gaze drifted to the staircase leading to the dimly lit second floor. "No one's home except me," John quickly explained, sensing Mr. Blaine's concern. "Egwene and Bona, my wife and daughter, are staying at a friend's house tonight." "Please forgive me," Atticus nodded, his voice gentle. "You understand we must remain vigilant, as the ministry under Amelia Bones is not as lenient as it once was." John nodded timidly, awed by the casual way Mr. Blaine mentioned the ministry and the Minister of Magic. "I came here first to assess the environment. Everything seems fine, so I can notify them to come over," Atticus said, turning to retrieve a bag of flue powder from the alcove. The empty bag made his eyes flicker momentarily. Soon, another gentleman emerged from the flames, carrying a cane. His gray eyes briefly met John's before he surveyed the room with indifference, ignoring John's outstretched hand. Embarrassed, John withdrew his hand. This gentleman, even more than Mr. Blaine, commanded John's awe, as he exuded the same aura as Mr. Greengrass. The next arrivals through the fireplace eased John's tension. First were the Charles brothers, who worked in the village's crucible workshop. Though they were siblings, they looked nothing alike. One was robust, the other slender. Their years of labor had darkened their skin as if scorched by flames. Following them was a corpulent woman whom John vaguely remembered. She had briefly worked in the broom workshop, but left after 2 months, dissatisfied with her pay. "I have only notified so many," Atticus began, but the narrative was interrupted as more figures emerged from the fireplace, each adding to the gathering in John's modest home. People for now. The eldest of the Charles family, the thinner of the 2 brothers, had a pair of dark, lively eyes. However, John, who was pressed against the wall, noticed that those eyes had become cloudy and lifeless. It must be due to unemployment, John thought. "Thank you, love." Mr. Angress, seated on a creaking wooden stool, bowed politely to the eldest son of the Charles family. This graceful gesture stirred a commotion among the group of laid-off workers. "I think I should first introduce myself to everyone here." Under the watchful eyes of many, Mr. Angress rose from his stool and smiled warmly at the crowd. "I'm Drogo Angress, a businessman who travels the world, but I'm British. I spent my childhood and youth here. Like you, I love this land and our magical world. Mr. Angress is a kind and elegant gentleman. We met him unexpectedly, the second son of the Charles family said in a somewhat naive voice. John glanced at him and found no change from his usual demeanor, still appearing as dull as ever. Mr. Angress sympathized with our situation and decided to help us, the second son continued. The people gathered there were uneasy, and his words made them hesitate. Are you helping Mr. Angress just out of sympathy? Asked a middle-aged woman who had worked in the same workshop as John for 2 months. John, too, began to feel doubtful. Could a respectable person from the upper class truly be helping them fight against the Ministry of Magic out of mere sympathy? Or, as the second son suggested, was Mr. Angress an exceptionally kind wizard? The crowd murmured their doubts. Mr. Angress showed no sign of impatience. He simply smiled and listened quietly. First of all, please allow me to express my respect to you all. When the murmuring subsided, Mr. Angress suddenly bowed to them in public, a gesture that startled the group of workers. Everyone here tonight is a warrior with a sense of justice and a precious spirit of resistance. In the dim candlelight, Mr. Angress's voice grew passionate. I want to answer the question you asked me. Why do I want to help you? Oh, actually, you misunderstood. I am not only helping you, but I am also helping myself. In front of their surprised faces, Angress spoke with great emotion. I have just introduced myself to you all, having grown up in the British wizarding world during my childhood and adolescence. The magical world back then, it makes me sad and nostalgic to talk about it now. Somehow, John felt uneasy watching Mr. Angress, who was over 50, take out a handkerchief to dab at the corners of his eyes. Although it had been less than a month since his life changed, he already missed the past. Freedom, equality, and a sense of justice. People only needed to work hard to improve their lives day by day. Mr. Angress sniffed. Whenever I visit other countries around the world, my new friends ask me about my country, and I always introduce it to them with great pride. I confidently tell them that the people in the British wizarding community are the happiest, our Diagon Alley is the most prosperous, and our Ministry of Magic is humane. I have seen many countries, but none is as beautiful as this. France, Germany, Italy, the United States, Japan. The audience listened intently to Mr. Angress's words, their eyes fixed on him. I enjoy the envious looks from my new friends when they hear me describe everything here. They envy me for growing up in such a great country, which is what I am most proud of. His impassioned voice echoed in the house, overpowering the whistling breeze outside. But what? What has become of the British wizarding world now? Mr. Angelus asked, his gaze sweeping across the room. His expression slowly turned somber. All the prosperity has vanished. End of this chapter. Chapter 1164. Let Fudge Come. So when did the change begin, and what caused us to lose the peaceful life we once had? The sharp question echoed through the room, demanding attention. Inside, the listeners murmured their thoughts, though their voices remained subdued and indistinct. John clenched his fists, a fiery determination burning in his brown eyes. The answer was clear to him. Everything had gone awry since the new minister took office. Ever since our friendly, kindly minister Cornelius Fudge was abruptly removed, and Amelia Bones, along with Atticus Blaine, took over, the British wizarding world has been in chaos, Angress declared, his expression grim. Diagon Alley, a place renowned for centuries, has been reduced to a wasteland overnight. St. Mungo's is overflowing with wizards injured in the war, and many of you have lost your jobs due to the conflict hastily provoked by the Ministry of Magic. Outside, the wind howled fiercely, bending the old locust tree at the door. The rustling leaves sounded like a mournful cry. But the eldest of the Shire family raised his hand, surprising John with his objection. The ministry is there to catch Death Eaters and fight you-know-who. Of course it is, Mr. Angress replied, a sarcastic smile playing on his lips. It's always right to fight you-know-who, but surely we can agree that the ministry's approach has been far from appropriate, right? The room buzzed with agreement, heads nodding in unison. Minister Bones and Blaine demand that the Death Eaters return to Azkaban voluntarily, or they will confiscate their wealth in Gringotts, Angress continued coldly. First of all, the Ministry of Magic has no legal basis for such actions. It's a completely dictatorial and hegemonic move. Moreover, by provoking you-know-who in the most violent manner, did they really expect no retaliation? The ministry under Bones has disregarded the interests of ordinary people entirely. You can see for yourselves that merchants in Diagon Alley are still setting up tents in open spaces to sell their goods. The ministry's reckless identification of leaders from ancient and noble pure-blood families as followers of you-know-who has directly led to the predicament you face now. In the crowd, a middle-aged man with dry yellow hair covered his face, his shoulders shaking. My family has served the Knots since my grandfather's time, but the ministry claims he was caught in the Battle of Diagon Alley and labeled him a Death Eater. I believe Mr. Knott might have simply gone to Gringotts to retrieve his gold that day, Angrus said sympathetically. I know Mr. Knott. He is a law-abiding wizard with no ties to the Death Eaters. A gray-eyed wizard with a cane stood at the door, peering outside with an expressionless face, wary of their gathering being discovered by the ministry. Yet, upon hearing Angrus's words, he cast a subtle glance in his direction. Now, I hope you understand why I want to help you, Angrus sighed heavily. I can't stand to see the Ministry of Magic in disarray. I can't bear to see the British wizarding world become a laughingstock. I can't watch as kind and innocent people like you are left without support. And of course, I wish for my business here to thrive as it once did. With renewed determination, Angrus raised his voice, rallying those around him. Atticus Blaine's voice resonated with determination. We must make the Ministry of Magic hear us, hold them accountable for their irresponsible decisions that have led to disastrous consequences, and demand they take responsibility for our lives. John gasped, recalling the past. In those days, he worked at Mr. Greengrass's workshop. Life wasn't luxurious, but their fields provided for their basic needs. The galleons he earned allowed him to occasionally buy clothes for Egwene and candies or potions to increase the chance of magical outbursts for Bona. He could even enjoy a couple of strong whiskies at the Leaky Cauldron. But that good life had vanished, thanks to the Ministry of Magic's repeated blunders. The Um's discussions grew louder. People shed their initial hesitance, whispering their anger and dissatisfaction. But what should we do? A woman, still wearing an apron, asked uneasily. Mr. Angrus, we're not skilled in magic. We can't stand against the ministry's enforcers. And Atticus Blaine, he could kill us all with a single spell. Oh, dear lady, Angrus replied with a pleasant expression. I never suggested we start a riot or fight the Ministry of Magic. We simply need to make our voices heard. Of course, to ensure the ministry takes us seriously, we might need to take some drastic actions, he added, emphasizing, our goal is fairness for ourselves. We don't intend to harm anyone, right? The lady nodded, her expression firming. The first thing we need to do, Angrus continued, raising a finger and regarding the group with a mix of indifference and hidden sarcasm, is to find more people dissatisfied with the ministry's actions. Only when our voices are loud enough will the ministry pay attention to our demands. We have to act. The Charles brothers suddenly stood, their faces alight with enthusiasm, fists waving at the crowd. We want stability. We want the wizarding world to return to normal. We demand compensation for our losses. If Bones can't deliver, then let Minister Fudge return. Their fervor ignited a new wave of anger among the impoverished, their faces marked with dissatisfaction towards those in power. Angry surveyed the group he had stirred with satisfaction. Though they were weak and downtrodden, their collective voice would force Amelia Bones to take notice. At that moment, no one noticed the sudden flames in John's extinguished fireplace, except for Angrus and the cold-eyed man, who immediately drew their wands, pointing them at the fireplace with cold expressions. This extreme action silenced the room, and everyone turned to stare at the fireplace spewing flames. "Have you invited any other guests, John?" Mr. Angrus asked, his eyes narrowed and his face sullen. "What? An invitation? Oh, I don't have." John stammered, staring in confusion at the green flames. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a girl with dark golden-brown hair, lively silver eyes, and peculiar carrot pendant earrings emerged from the fireplace. Clad in light pink pajamas, she ignored the wands aimed at her and asked excitedly, "Practice singing?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1165, Lovegood Father and Daughter. Mr. Lovegood's home mirrored his eccentric personality, resembling a miniature black castle. Egwene experienced an unexpected mishap during her first visit there. She had come to deliver fresh fruits and vegetables, as it was unrealistic to expect a solitary man like Mr. Lovegood to regularly visit the village at the mountain's base for groceries. At that time, he was engrossed in writing an article. When she knocked on the wooden door of the fenced yard, adorned with peculiar warning signs, Mr. Lovegood called out from inside, inviting her in. As a housewife familiar with tending to crops, Egwene was immediately captivated by the exotic plants lining the winding path to the house. She found herself drawn to a vine laden with plump bean pods, and thus she was introduced to the magical knotweed vine, a plant she would never forget. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lovegood," she began, stepping into the house. The interior was as unique as its exterior, with all the furniture crafted in curved shapes to fit the round walls, including the stove, sink, and cupboards. Each piece was painted with vibrant depictions of flowers, insects, and birds. Coming from her own somber home, Egwene felt a sudden discomfort in this warm and lively environment. She stood by the fireplace, nervously clutching her clothes, her gaze drawn to the ceiling, pierced by a cast-iron spiral staircase. Mr. Lovegood was nowhere to be seen on the first floor, nor were Luna and Bona, whom Egwene assumed were upstairs. "Come up on your own, Egwene. I'm writing an important article that needs to be published tomorrow morning." Mr. Lovegood's muffled voice echoed from above, sounding as if he had a cold. Leaving the fresh vegetables on the first floor, Egwene ascended the stairs alone. She had never ventured to the second floor before, which was far messier than the first. It appeared to be a combination of a living room and a studio, with papers and books scattered everywhere. Exquisite animal models hung from the ceiling, grinning at her as she entered. Startled, Egwene recoiled slightly before spotting Mr. Lovegood amidst a sea of papers, furiously writing. He wore a stained nightgown, and his long, cotton candy white hair fluttered in the breeze from the open window, making his nightgown billow like a medieval noblewoman's dress. "Oh, Mr. Lovegood, you'll catch a cold," Egwene exclaimed, rushing to close the window. Mr. Lovegood remained focused on his writing, not even glancing up, which left Egwene feeling a bit awkward. "May I ask what that is, Mr. Lovegood?" she inquired, her attention drawn to a massive gray spiral horn on the table. "Ah, that's what I'm writing about," Mr. Lovegood replied, finally looking up with enthusiasm. "A friend from the Ministry of Magic found it while clearing the ruins after the Battle of Diagon Alley. He asked several people about it, but no one knew what it was. He brought it to me, and I recognized it immediately. It's the horn of a scimitar-horned snorkel." Egwene's eyes reflected her confusion, but she nodded politely. The scimitar-horned snorkel is a very sensitive and shy magical creature, but it can become quite unfriendly if provoked. Now that it was found in the ruins of Diagon Alley, I have solid evidence," Mr. Lovegood declared, gazing at the peculiar horn with fascination. What evidence?" Egwene asked hesitantly. Evan couldn't help but ask, was it really you-know-who used the squiggle-horned snorkel in the Battle of Diagon Alley? "Of course it was," Mr. Lovegood exclaimed in a matter-of-fact tone. "That's the article I'm writing." "Who are you talking to, Dad?" Suddenly, the sound of a door opening upstairs was followed by a teenage girl skipping out of her room. "Mrs. Senna from down the mountain and Bona are going to stay at our house tonight." Mr. Lovegood's demeanor changed entirely when he addressed his daughter. His eyes, bloodshot from staying up late, softened with tenderness. "Mom," a clear, young voice called from the room. With a thud, a girl with pigtails and bare feet rushed down the stairs and into Egwene's arms. "Oh, you didn't get into any trouble with Mr. Lovegood and Sister Luna, did you, Bona?" Egwene asked, lifting her daughter and planting a kiss on her chubby cheeks. "I'm not causing any trouble, Mom." Bona shook her head earnestly, then looked at her mother with eager eyes. "Are we going to sleep here tonight?" "Yes, because your dad is entertaining some friends at home," Egwene explained, glancing at Mr. Lovegood, who was once again absorbed in his writing. Seeing no sign of displeasure on his face, she sighed in relief and pinched Bona's cheek affectionately. "What were you and Luna playing in the room?" "Sister Luna was telling me about Hogwarts and Professor Blaine," Bona exclaimed excitedly. "Mom, when can I go to Hogwarts? I want to take Professor Blaine's physical education class, too." "Oh, You're too young, Bona. You'll need to wait a few more years before you can go to school. Egwene replied, her eyes flickering with a mix of emotions. Bona, dissatisfied with this answer, pouted and continued to protest. Good afternoon, Mrs. Senna. Luna interjected at the right moment, her smile tinged with a hint of envy. Oh, good afternoon, Luna. Egwene responded with a shy smile. You've grown at least an inch since Christmas, Luna. Luna tilted her head and smiled sweetly, noticing her father was still engrossed in his article. Come to my room, Mrs. Senna. I was just telling Bona about how Professor Blaine subdued dozens of Dementors during the Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. She waved to Egwene as if they were old friends. Let's listen together. With that, she skipped back to her room. What a peculiar girl, Egwene thought, but then a wave of uneasiness and worry washed over her. Atticus Blaine had single-handedly subdued dozens of the dreadful Dementors in Azkaban. Could anyone truly stand against creatures as terrifying as Dementors? Egwene pursed her lips. Yet, it wasn't impossible for a wizard as great as Atticus Blaine or Albus Dumbledore to be more powerful than a Dementor. As soon as she entered the room, which was covered with a light blue carpet, Egwene's attention was drawn to a large picture frame on the cabinet beside the bed. The photo showed a young Luna embracing a woman who bore a striking resemblance to her. Egwene's expression shifted. As an old resident of St. Catchpole Village, she was well aware of Mrs. Lovegood's tragic story. Bona wriggled out of Egwene's arms as soon as they entered the room, leaping onto Luna's bed and bouncing around with glee. I haven't finished the story yet, Sister Luna. I still want to hear how the great Professor Blaine drove away so many Dementors. With no stool in sight, Egwene hesitated, unsure of where to sit. Just sit on the bed, Mrs. Senna. Luna suggested understandingly, then jumped onto the bed herself and began recounting the tale of the guardian angel that protected the entire campus. Hurry up and sit down, Mom. Sister Luna is going to tell you a story, Bona urged, waving her mother over as she stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed. Egwene sighed in dissatisfaction, reluctantly complying with her daughter's request. She perched on the edge of Luna's fragrant bed, half of her weight resting on the soft mattress. She had no intention of spending the entire afternoon in Mr. Lovegood's daughter's room. Out of politeness and to appease Bona, she planned to explore the house later, hoping to find something useful to do, like cleaning or organizing the clutter. A home without a hostess, no matter how warm, always seemed a bit lacking. As she pondered ways to tidy up Mr. Lovegood's chaotic studio, Egwene listened to Luna's enthusiastic monologue about the renowned Atticus Blaine. The afternoon drifted into evening, with Egwene absorbed in Luna's tales. End of this chapter. Chapter 1166, Luna's Wisdom. Perhaps it is because Mr. Lovegood's home is nestled between two gentle peaks that the wind here is not as fierce as it is at the foot of the mountain. As night descends, the stars emerge, and the wispy mist atop the mountain dances with the breeze, rendering the ancient galaxy both graceful and dreamlike. Though they share the same location, the scenery on the mountain contrasts starkly with that at its base. Boom! An unexpected explosion jolted Egwene from her reverie as she gazed at the starry sky, lost in a peculiar and melancholic mood. She quickly turned her head to look back. The explosion had occurred on the second floor of the house, scattering confetti throughout the living room and sending much of it flying outside. What happened, Mr. Lovegood? Egwene shouted in panic, rushing into the yard to investigate. Don't be nervous, Egwene, Luna said with a serene smile, her silver eyes shimmering ethereally under the starry sky. She was in the yard, introducing Bonnie to some peculiar plants. Is the printer broken again, Dad? She called out, preventing Mrs. Senna from entering the house to make trouble. Luna shouted up to the second-floor window. Do you need my help? Cough, cough, came a choking sound from the window. It's just a small problem, Luna. I can handle it. You and Bona can continue your research, Mr. Lovegood reassured from across the room. To Egwene's surprise, Luna seemed unconcerned. She squatted down again, holding the hem of her pajamas, unfazed by the crystal water droplets trickling onto her dark golden hair. She continued to pick a type of orange-red, radish-shaped fruit from a cluster of lush bushes for herself and Bona. Luna squeezed the juice from the radish fruit and playfully smeared it on the tip of Bona's nose, creating a clown-like appearance that made Bona giggle. "Luna, are you sure Mr. Lovegood doesn't need any help?" Egwene asked hesitantly, as the clanging sounds from the second floor persisted. Luna, still crouched on the ground, turned her head to glance at Egwene. The pure light in her eyes left Egwene momentarily dazed. "If Dad needed help, he would have told me. Since he hasn't, there's no need to worry," Luna replied, her voice as soft as the thin mist above them. "Bona." Luna clapped her hands, stood up, and held up her skirt. She said to Bona cheerfully, "Go wash your nose. Next, I'm going to teach you how to make carrot earrings." "Okay, Sister Luna," Bona chirped, leaping up from the ground and dashing into the house to rinse her nose in the kitchen. Egwene, Luna's loose hair, tied in a casual ponytail, was blown against her white cheek, which was stained with a bit of mud. Her silver eyes fixed on Egwene, and the insightful look made Egwene's heart race. "What's wrong, Luna?" Egwene stammered, feeling a bit nervous. "Are you worried?" Luna asked, her hands hanging naturally at her sides, her ethereal smile appearing both strange and mysterious to Egwene. "Oh, what? I didn't." Egwene quickly averted her gaze from Luna's, feeling slightly defensive. After all, the girl before her was just a teenager. "I'm just not sure if Bonnie's dad can cook for himself and his friends. You know, not every man is as skilled in the kitchen as Mr. Lovegood. Most can't even make an omelet," Egwene fibbed. Luna's light golden eyelashes fluttered momentarily. Still smiling, she turned around and picked 2 carrots from the bush. After a few deft movements, the stem of the fruit split open, and Luna clipped the 2 small carrots to her ears. Seeing Egwene's continued unease, Luna shook her head as if to dispel something. "It's okay, Egwene. You don't have to say it if you don't want to," Luna said gently. Egwene blushed at the words of the teenage girl, looking at Luna, who... Atticus Blaine was fiddling with the fruit again, as if contemplating making a pair of earrings for Bona. Egwene moved her lips, hesitated, and then closed them. After repeating this several times, she couldn't help but ask, "Luna, what you mentioned this afternoon on about Mr. Blaine, are those stories true?" Luna's eyes remained clear, devoid of unnecessary curiosity. She nodded. "He is the best professor, the wisest, and most powerful wizard. With him around, I don't worry too much about you-know-who." Egwene's heart ached, suspecting that John and his friends at the foot of the mountain might be plotting something. Her face was filled with worry and hesitation, but Luna didn't press for more information. She simply looked at Egwene quietly. Egwene's low voice was drowned out by a sudden mountain breeze. "Mom, Sister Luna!" Bona called out, her nose red from rubbing it herself, as she ran back with her pigtails bouncing. "What are you talking about?" Egwene's tearful narration was interrupted by her daughter's innocent voice. "Your mother said she forgot to get your pajamas, Bona," Luna said, placing the carrot earrings she had just crafted into Bona's hands. "I'll go fetch them for you. You and Egwene should take a shower first." Before Egwene could stop her, Luna trotted into the house. "Dad, I'm going out for a bit and will be back soon," she called up the spiral staircase. "Do you need to take your wand with you, Luna?" Mr. Lovegood shouted amid the clattering sounds. Luna's eyes sparkled. "No, Dad." With a flash of fire, Luna appeared in Egwene's dim little house. "Bona's pajamas," she announced. John, standing by the fireplace, blinked in confusion before realizing, "Oh, you're Luna, Mr. Lovegood's daughter from over the hill." The voice drew Luna's attention to a man in his 20s, whose features bore a resemblance to Bona's. Ignoring the 2 wands and the underlying tension in the room, Luna nodded cheerfully. "I'm Luna Lovegood, Mr. Senna. Egwene asked me to help Bona get her pajamas." Angris's eyelids twitched slightly, and he slowly lowered his wand. The coldness on his face vanished, replaced by a weary smile as he held his forehead. "Ah, I thought you were here for gold. My business just suffered a terrible failure, and I can't afford another galleon. By the way, why didn't Egwene come herself?" "She's bathing Bona," Luna replied, glancing at John. "It's quite chilly over there, Mr. Senna. I should hurry back, or Bona might catch a cold." "Ooh!" John snapped back to reality, apologized to Mr. Angris, and rushed to the second floor. After watching John dash upstairs, Luna turned around, her eyes wide open, surveying the faces in the room without any hint of discomfort, seemingly oblivious to the tense atmosphere. The gray-eyed wizard holding a staff at the door froze momentarily. Luna looked at Angris and asked in her characteristically unconventional manner, Are you guys chatting? It's just a bunch of us lamenting the awful world, beautiful lady, Angus replied with a smile. Care to join us? It seems we can't reach a consensus? Luna said, I think the current situation is quite good. Of course, it would be better if there were no mysterious person causing trouble. Thump, thump, thump! John hurried upstairs to Bona's bedroom, grabbed the pajamas tossed at the end of the bed, and rushed back down, breathless. He was surprised to see Mr. Angus conversing with Luna in a gentle tone, a stark contrast to the intimidating expression he wore when Luna first entered the room. Goodbye, Mr. Senna, Luna said, waving to everyone after retrieving Bona's pajamas. She hummed a tune and skipped out, leaving behind an air of unexpected calm. As Luna stood before the fireplace, Angus watched her intently. With a determined shake of the bag, Luna tossed the last of the flue powder into the hearth. In an instant, she vanished amidst the swirling green flames. Nothing happened, Egwene exclaimed, pacing anxiously in front of the fireplace in the castle's cozy cottage. She had been eagerly awaiting Luna's return and rushed to greet her as soon as she emerged from the fire. However, before Egwene could voice her questions, Luna offered a reassuring smile. It's just a bunch of people complaining, Luna said dismissively. It's getting late, Egwene. You show Eldie head to bed. Tonight, you and Bona can sleep in my room. End of this chapter. Chapter 1167. One more step. Before the compressed air could create a sharp pop, it was whisked away by the fierce mountain winds, leaving only the faint sound of a balloon deflating. Atticus Blaine and Lucius Malfoy stood atop the mountain, turning simultaneously to admire the picturesque village of Ottery St. Catchpole below. From their vantage point, the village resembled a cluster of tiny toy houses, scattered amidst the clouds and bathed in a slanting beam of moonlight. They attempted to spot the well-swept broom shed they had just departed from, but the distance and the clear moonlight rendered the solitary house indistinguishable, like a ripple in a vast ocean. Reluctantly, they shifted their gaze to a house that loomed like a black pillar between the adjacent hillsides. Though they could have easily apparated directly to it, an unspoken understanding passed between them, and they chose to walk instead. Come to think of it, I haven't had the chance to express my condolences, Lucius, Atticus began, his steps steady against the strong wind, a challenging feat for someone of his age. I heard the Dark Lord took your wand after the Battle of Diagon Alley. Where does this begin? Lucius replied, his expression remaining indifferent. Yet, deep within his eyes, a flicker of worry betrayed him as he glanced toward the stone house. The Dark Lord selecting my wand is a sign of his trust in me. I'm afraid you cannot understand this yet. For those of us who have sworn allegiance to the Dark Lord, it is a great honor. Oh, my apologies, Atticus said, though his tone lacked any true remorse. He cast a glance at Lucius's cane, a flawless smile playing on his lips. So whose wand are you using now? Lucius's cold demeanor finally cracked, revealing a sinister edge. My wife Narcissa's. That is all right. The Dark Lord has not forbidden me from finding another wand. Indeed, Atticus nodded, smiling. A stronger gust of wind forced them to pause, raising their arms to shield themselves. Once the wind subsided, they resumed their walk, with Atticus eager to continue the conversation. I don't think the Dark Lord fully understands either, Atticus mused, his interest piqued. I heard about the events during the Dark Lord's resurrection ceremony and the conclusion of this war. Harry Potter's wand seemed to counter the Dark Lord's. The Dark Lord underestimated Blaine's power, not realizing the source of Harry Potter's strength. He believed he had overcome the protection given by the boy's mother, yet the outcome was unexpected. Now, he is keen to understand the prophecy from the Department of Mysteries. Atticus spoke with eloquence, but Lucius remained on high alert. He was not well acquainted with this man who had joined their ranks midway, and the insights he shared were not to be taken lightly. Was Atticus testing him? Lucius's vigilance heightened. I must remind you not to speculate on the master's wisdom and magical power, Lucius cautioned, treading carefully on the slippery grass, much like he navigated the precarious path of his life. Whether it was Atticus Blaine or Harry Potter, they were fortunate to survive their encounters with the master. The unexpected turn of events at the Battle of Diagon Alley might have been a trick left by the cunning Dumbledore. "Oh, Lucius, you are as cunning as the rumors suggest," Atticus chuckled, shaking his head. "I merely consider you the wisest among the Dark Lord's many servants, which is why I share my thoughts with you. Thank you for your—" They were already in the courtyard near the Lovegood residence, and the worry in Lucius's eyes deepened, though he dared not show it. The man beside him was a shrewd and perceptive wizard, in some ways more challenging to deal with than the Dark Lord himself. "But perhaps you don't fully understand us," Lucius began, his voice steady. "The Dark Lord's Death Eaters are the most exceptional wizards in this country. Each possesses formidable magic and commendable wisdom. Yet, compared to the great Dark Lord, we all pale in Sesquimal, on comparison." His response was impeccable. "Oh, ha-ha! Humility is a virtue, but excessive humility can seem insincere, my dear Lucius," Adam replied, lowering his voice as they neared the yard. He cast a cold glance at the house, his tone gentle. "I am certain that, aside from you, no other Death Eater would consider using those who are less intelligent than magical creatures to lure Bones out from behind all her protections. However, I do have a small doubt." Standing at the courtyard gate, Adam turned to Lucius with a friendly expression. "This was clearly your idea, yet you don't seem concerned tonight?" "Those people, no different from muggles, disgust me," Lucius replied calmly, having anticipated the question. "The Dark Lord knows I'm not adept at dealing with such lowly beings, which is why he included you in this plan, correct? Well, let's go in and see if the girl truly intruded on the meeting intentionally, as you suggested." Lucius drew his wand from his cane. Disappointment flickered in Adam's eyes. Most of the Dark Lord's Death Eaters were mere thugs, reveling in violence. Few, like Lucius Malfoy, could remain rational and composed. Adam hoped to forge a deeper alliance with Lucius, but Lucius seemed wary of him. Adam also drew his wand and, like Lucius, used the disillusionment charm to conceal himself. He tapped the wooden door handle lightly with his wand. "It's really cozy," he chuckled when the handle showed no response. Lucius understood the implication. The wizarding world was in turmoil, and ordinary wizards lived in constant fear of being discovered. Yet, the Lovegood family seemed utterly unguarded in their home. The wooden door swung open silently with the breeze, revealing a garden of magical plants rustling in the wind. After a thorough check, they found no traps. Click, 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 the sound of a printer echoed softly. Mr. Lovegood had not returned to his bedroom, but had fallen asleep at his workbench by the window, while the peculiar printer behind him continued to churn out colorful pages. Adam picked up a page from the floor, examining it in the moonlight, his eyes filled with confusion. The two floated up to the third floor like specters and quietly opened Luna's room. 3 women of varying ages slept on the large bed. A young girl nestled in her mother's arms, an innocent smile on her face. The mother, arms wrapped around her daughter, snored softly, indicating a deep sleep. That left Luna. She lay on her side, facing the window. The fluttering curtains occasionally parted, allowing moonlight to illuminate her fair cheeks. In slumber, Luna appeared less eccentric and more graceful. Her desk was cluttered with magic books, Hogwarts summer homework, and a homemade bonsai. Lucius bent down to inspect the bonsai. A wand was embedded in the soil as a support, with delicate vines entwining it. Adam joined him, and they both stared at the wand in silence. It seemed the girl's intrusion into their gathering was merely accidental. But Adam paused, considering the implications. Atticus Blaine turned around, his expression cold and unyielding, as he gazed at the girl bathed in moonlight. Slowly, he raised his arms. Lucius's demeanor shifted slightly, and he quickly grasped Atticus's wrist. Since when did the Death Eaters become soft-hearted? Lucius could read the hesitation in Atticus's eyes. "Remember John Cena down the mountain," Lucius whispered. "It's not wise to harm his wife and daughter at this moment." Atticus's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but he eventually lowered his wand. A gentle breeze stirred the air, and in an instant, both men vanished from the room. The moonlight danced like rippling water across the walls, casting an ethereal glow. Silently, the girl on the bed opened her silver eyes, taking in the empty room. End of this chapter. Chapter 1168, A Quiet Departure. Luna quietly slipped off the bed, casting a glance back at her mother and sister, who were peacefully asleep. She sighed in relief, knowing they were blissfully unaware of the danger they had narrowly escaped. Brushing aside the golden strands that fell over her eyes, Luna gazed out the window. The rain-washed grass on the mountain swayed gently under the soft moonlight, resembling underwater plants. The whistling wind and the rustling leaves enveloped the mountaintop, creating an atmosphere of serene tranquility. Luna approached a potted plant, retrieved her wand, and changed into jeans and a t-shirt. "Dad, Dad," she called softly. In the studio on the second floor, a peculiar printer churned out colorful pages, filling the air with the scent of fresh ink. The rhythmic clicking of the mechanical parts was noisy, yet oddly hypnotic, lulling one into drowsiness. Luna gently shook the shoulders of Mr. Lovegood, who was slumped over his desk. "What is it, Luna?" Mr. Lovegood murmured, recognizing his daughter's voice even before opening his eyes. Noticing her attire, his silver eyes, identical to Luna's, widened slightly. "Are you going out?" "I'm going to see Professor Blaine," Luna replied. "Really?" Mr. Lovegood glanced at the sky outside. "Can't you write to him, Luna? By the time the owl delivers the letter, he'll probably be awake and ready to read it." Luna remained silent, simply blinking at her father. "Oh, it's urgent," Mr. Lovegood deduced, understanding without needing further explanation. With Luna's assistance, he placed his hands on the table and attempted to stand. He staggered a few steps, scratching the white hair that resembled a tangle of weeds atop his head. "Atticus Blaine, such a busy man. Let me think. Maybe I can try my luck at the Ministry of Magic. All right, I'll go change my clothes." "I'll go by myself, Dad," Luna insisted, shaking her head. "I need you to watch over Egwene and Bona." "Yes," Mr. Lovegood grunted, his eyes brightening as he became more alert. "We can use the Flu network, but our fireplace isn't directly connected. Let's hope my acquaintance in the transportation department is on duty tonight." Father and daughter descended the stairs, and Mr. Lovegood tossed a pinch of Flu powder into the fireplace, sticking his head into the flames. Luna gazed absently through the kitchen window at the yard. "It's done," Mr. Lovegood announced after a moment, withdrawing his head. "Eric said you can use the fireplace to reach the Ministry of Magic, but it's best to return before dawn. It's not as easy to use the back door as it used to be. Since the supervisory department was established, everyone is more mindful of the department's code of conduct. Oh, and I checked for you. Blaine is currently in his office, chatting with a goblin." "Thank you, Dad," Luna said, looking up at Mr. Lovegood, who was already nodding off. "You can go back to bed and rest. I'll keep an eye on the printer when I return. And before you sleep, you might want to cast some warning spells at the door to prevent a crumple-horned snorkack from sniffing out the horn you collected and barging into the Ministry of Magic." With that, Luna ignored her father's surprised expression and stepped into the warm fire. Atticus Blaine's office at the Ministry of Magic mirrored the simplicity of his office at Hogwarts. The room was so unadorned that even the wrinkles on old Banna's face seemed to smooth out slightly as he entered the office marked British Wizarding Development Committee. A plain desk piled with documents, a camp bed behind a curtain, a few high-backed chairs, and a low coffee table were the only furnishings, save for a massive, square table draped in black cloth at the center of the room. The office resembled a freshly tidied warehouse. "No one's going to object if you add a few more pieces of furniture to your office, Mr. Blaine," old Banna remarked, shaking his head with a wry smile. "You don't have to be so austere." "It's hard to say, Banna," replied Atticus Blaine. Ho, despite working tirelessly for days and nights, showed no signs of fatigue. Instead, his eyes occasionally sparkled with an intimidating intensity. He guided Banna to the reception area and then turned to the fireplace to prepare tea, smiling as he did so. The Daily Prophet published an article the day before yesterday, criticizing some of my recent actions. They mentioned my confiscation of the Death Eater's coffers and the agreement I led with the Ministry of Magic to develop the Diagon Alley site. They even accused me of imposing punitive fines on some closed workshops as a means to profit personally. So I must maintain a clean image in public. "Couldn't you just tell them to be quiet?" old Banna asked, accepting the teacup from Atticus and leaning forward. "Even the Ministry of Magic, under Fudge's leadership, has the authority to silence the Daily Prophet." "I need people to talk, Banna," Atticus replied, shaking his head with a laugh. Minister Bone's public criticism of Voldemort's rhetoric wasn't about restoring the glory of pureblood wizards or elevating wizards above muggles. It was about exposing his personal dictatorship. If it were revealed that the Ministry of Magic was suppressing public opinion, it would be like shooting ourselves in the foot. Old Bana pursed his lips, acknowledging the truth in Atticus's words. So, Atticus waved his wand, conjuring several trays of refreshments on the coffee table. After discussing the tea and the craftsmanship of the Ministry of Magic's house elves, Atticus leaned back in his chair. Smiling at old Bana, who seemed intent on testing his patience, Atticus said, "How about joining us, Bana? I assume your relocation plan won't face too much resistance, right?" "You're asking a question you already know the answer to, Mr. Blaine," old Bana replied, launching into his anticipated performance. He sighed and groaned. "We issued a brief statement about transferring some operations from Paris to London, which sparked a strong backlash from the French Ministry of Magic. They suspect we're planning to move our headquarters to London as well. You know, the French Ministry of Magic won't approve of this. We contribute significant tax revenue and jobs there, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they sent strikers to block our doors and prevent us from leaving. You could protest to the International Confederation of Wizards about the French Ministry's infringement. I believe hope will make a fair judgment," Atticus suggested, his words as soft as cotton, effortlessly deflecting old Bana's initial argument. Old Bana's dark green face clouded over, and he shook his head. "This is a serious issue for all parties involved. Mr. Blaine, you know there are many business exchanges between Britain and France. Mishandling the goblins' migration could disrupt existing cooperation and worsen the current high unemployment rate in the British wizarding world." Atticus raised his teacup towards Bana, a gesture of apology for his earlier jest. "I've always said," he continued, refilling their teacups, his smile fading slightly, "patience is key, Bana. The French people's concerns and reactions are understandable. I don't advocate severing our friendly cooperation further." In light of the current tense situation within the European wizarding community, particularly between the official and unofficial wizarding circles of Britain and France, it is crucial to provide the French Ministry of Magic with a satisfactory explanation to ease their concerns. "Forgive my lack of insight, Mr. Blaine," old Bana said, furrowing his brow. "We have already agreed to transfer only a portion of the business." "Naturally, that won't place-hate the French, old Bana," Atticus Blaine replied, gesturing towards the square table in the center of his office while sipping his tea. "Gringotts has entered into a partnership with the British Ministry of Magic, offering substantial financial support for the reconstruction of Diagon Alley. Isn't it reasonable, then, to establish a Gringotts branch with superior R specifications and more comprehensive functions to manage this significant investment?" Chapter 1169, The Chill of High Places. "It won't be that easy, Mr. Blaine. We've been dealing with the French for centuries. They won't give in so easily." Old Bana's voice was tinged with bitterness as he responded to Atticus Blaine's proposal. His face was etched with worry, and he sighed deeply. "In my opinion, their aim is to ensure the goblins provide a satisfactory amount of gold before they leave." Old Bana cast a quick glance at Atticus, noting the unchanged smile on his lips. His drooping eyelids trembled slightly. "But you know this is difficult, Mr. Blaine. The goblins have just made the largest investment in history, and it may take another century to recover the principal. We no longer have the resources to satisfy the greedy appetite of the French Ministry of Magic." "So what?" Atticus replied, picking up his teacup and taking a leisurely sip. "Do you need more help from me on this matter?" Both the man and the goblin in the office silently assessed each other, each recognizing the other's cunning. Atticus was well aware that the sorrow on the old goblin's face was feigned, and that its true purpose for being there was something else entirely. Meanwhile, old Bana was contemplating the goblin's predicament, which stemmed from their support of Blaine's plan. Yet Blaine acted as if it was solely the goblin's problem, offering his assistance merely as a gesture of friendship. Despite his resentment, old Bana had to endure it alone. Once the arrow is shot, there is no turning back. The goblins had already committed to supporting Atticus Blaine, making it impossible for them to align with anyone else. Old Bana understood that when dealing with a wizard like Atticus Blaine, one must approach with gentleness, for any show of strength would be met with even greater force. As for threats, they were the most foolish of tactics. Numerous precedents had shown that Atticus Blaine was not as bound by rules and laws as Dumbledore. "You know, Mr. Blaine." Old Bana sighed heavily. "I've been under tremendous pressure. Many respected goblins in the community have voiced concerns about our deep cooperation with the British Ministry of Magic. They believe I shouldn't risk everything on an investment so risky that it offers no immediate return." As he finished speaking, Old Bana slowed his tone, carefully observing Atticus's expression. "Not seeing any benefits in the short term?" Atticus's smile widened, and he spoke slowly. "How can this be explained, Bana? If you're accusing me of betrayal—" "That is not my intention, Mr. Blaine." Old Bana was startled, and a cold sweat broke out on his back. "I know you're under a lot of pressure to keep your promise to the goblins, but in terms of numbers," Old Bana chose his words carefully, "there's no doubt that if we could be more generous with the number of releases, we could silence those dissenting voices, allowing us goblins to work together to overcome the challenges posed by the French Ministry of Magic." "How much do you want?" Atticus asked calmly. Old Bana hesitated for a long moment before slowly spreading out his 5 fingers. "You know you're asking for a lot, Bana." Atticus shook his head, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "That's beyond the reasonable number for an exchange group. How about this?" After a moment's silence, Atticus offered his final terms. "We will double the original 5 and give you 10 places." Seeing that Old Bana was about to protest, Atticus spoke in a deep voice. "This is the bottom line I can accept, Bana. I don't think you believe I can do whatever I want, right?" Old Bana was still reluctant to concede, but at that moment, Atticus frowned and glanced toward the door. "I'm sorry, Bana. I'm afraid our meeting—" The meeting had to end here. An unexpected visitor had arrived at the Ministry of Magic. If Atticus Blaine wasn't mistaken, the visitor was likely there to see him. Despite the heavy expression on Old Bana's face as he left, his steps were brisk as he exited the office. Atticus watched him disappear around the corner, the stairs, and sighed softly. It was clear to Atticus that Old Bana had come merely to try his luck and extort money. Regardless of how many more places he promised, Old Bana would gladly accept them. There was no need for pretense. Given their past good relationship, Atticus would have obliged. However, Atticus couldn't blame Old Bana for suddenly becoming so unfamiliar with him. Ever since Atticus had used Harry's prosecution to bring down Fudge and then forcefully pushed Amelia to the top, his actions had changed perceptions. He had orchestrated the Battle of Diagon Alley and stood against Voldemort in front of countless witnesses. His stature in the eyes of the public had grown immensely. To many knowledgeable individuals in the European wizarding world, he not only possessed unmatched magical powers, but also had the backing of the British Ministry of Magic and Dumbledore. In their eyes, he was even more formidable than Voldemort at his peak. This transformation resulted in Old Bana, once an old friend, becoming restrained and cautious around him. The saying, "It's lonely at the top," had never felt truer. However, this superficial power was never Atticus's goal. On the contrary, bearing such power was a burden for him. The reason he didn't seek to escape, but instead trapped himself in it, was simple. Atticus walked to the square table in the middle of the office. With a slight flick of his fingers, the black curtain covering the table was lifted by an unseen wind, revealing a massive sand table. Standing beside it with his hands behind his back, Atticus's deep gaze swept over the architectural models, quietly waiting for a knock on his office door. Based on Miss Dorr, Blaine's outstanding performance in the Battle of Diagon Alley, Minister Bones and other directors of the ministry originally wanted to appoint him as senior deputy minister, explained the wizard, who had been introducing Professor Blaine's work at the Ministry of Magic with deep respect. They stood in front of an office door, pointing at the gilded sign hanging on the doorframe. Luna's eyes followed his gesture, British Wizarding Development Council. But Mr. Blaine declined the offer, stating that he was already the Director of Student Safety at Hogwarts. However, to ensure that Minister Bones and Mr. Blaine could still provide guidance to the ministry, they established this department. The members include all senior officials of the Ministry of Magic, including the Minister, but Mr. Blaine is the Chief Commissioner. Thank you, sir, Luna replied politely. May I see him now? Before they could knock, the office door slowly opened, surprising them both. Inside the modest office, Luna found a wizard standing next to a massive sand table, his hands behind his back, his presence as steady as a mountain. As she looked at him, Luna's heart began to beat slightly faster, and the Ministry of Magic employee who had led her there trembled with excitement. Atticus turned slowly, his gaze meeting Luna's curious silver eyes. He smiled gently and waved her in. Come on in, Luna. There are no dung bombs in this office. End of this chapter. Chief Designer. In the modest office, Professor Atticus Blaine stood beside a vast sand table. The flickering candlelight cast a majestic silhouette on his youthful face. He stood there quietly, a gentle smile playing on his lips, yet Luna felt an overwhelming aura of mastery emanating from him, causing her to squint slightly. Good evening, Professor Blaine, Luna greeted. Her voice as clear as a mountain stream, her head tilted slightly, and a subtle smile gracing her lips. Technically, it's early morning, Luna, Atticus replied, nodding to the inexplicably excited employee from the Ministry of Magic. He then turned his gentle gaze to Luna, who had eagerly approached him, her eyes fixed on the sand table without hesitation. Would you like some tea? You must have traveled quite a distance. Thank you, Luna replied, her attention immediately captured by a uniquely shaped building at the center of the octagonal layout, encircled by a circular outer wall. But I should get back to bed, Professor Blaine, so there's no need. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she pointed to the magnificent high-rise building at the center of the sand table, divided into 8 equal sections by a central traction line. May I ask what that is, Professor Blaine? Although the reconstruction plan for Diagon Alley is still under strict confidentiality, I see no harm in sharing, Atticus said, not rushing to inquire about Luna's unexpected visit. He smiled and explained, That's the new Ministry of Magic office building I've designed. It's slightly taller than the magical capital of the United States, with a total of 108 floors. Its design resembles an inverted tornado. In fact, once completed, each floor can rotate around the central support. The facade is made of transfiguration glass, which can display Ministry of Magic policies, advertisements, and even generate revenue. Luna could easily detect the slight pride in Professor Blaine's tone. It was clear that once this unique building was completed, the biography on his chocolate frog card would need updating. But why does the Ministry of Magic need to relocate? Luna asked, still puzzled. What's wrong with its current location? Well, as you know, the Ministries of Magic in several countries are built underground. If employees want to see the sun, they rely on magical projections, Atticus explained, acknowledging the oddity of the situation. Luna nodded, her gaze wandering across the sand table. With her keen intelligence, she quickly realized that Professor Blaine had no intention of restoring the destroyed Diagon Alley to its former state. Instead, he envisioned creating a new magic city on its ruins. Apart from the storm building of the Ministry of Magic at the city's center, each of the 8 divided areas had its own distinct style. Luna immediately recognized the purpose of the southern area. Unlike the neatly constructed buildings in other sections, this area featured low-rise structures facing the street, reminiscent of the old Diagon Alley. It seemed destined to become the new commercial hub for wizards. Diagon Alley plays an irreplaceable role in the lives of the British wizarding community. Therefore, it, along with the new Ministry of Magic building and, Atticus pointed his wand at 2 other areas, the passenger terminal in the residential area and the freight terminal in the industrial area, are included in the first phase of the project. Luna nodded, her eyes still fixed on the sand table with a sense of wonder. She noticed an area that was clearly residential, yet the architectural models were far more luxurious than those in other neighborhoods. Each building was nestled within a sprawling landscape garden. What is that? Luna asked, her voice barely above a whisper, captivated by the sight. Atticus Blaine raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his expression. That's for the affluent members of the wizarding world, he explained. It's adjacent to the office CBD, surrounded by mountains and rivers, and includes a sanatorium that combines medical and nursing care. Each building is incredibly expensive and limited in number. Once completed, a special security team will be recruited to ensure the area's safety. The conditions for purchasing these private estates are much stricter than for ordinary residences. To qualify, you must own a workshop or company within the British wizarding world. The Ministry of Magic will assess the taxes paid by these entities and their contribution to employment for non-magical people. Only if you meet these criteria can you enter the lottery. Lottery? Luna echoed, intrigued. Yes, a lottery, Atticus smiled, guiding Luna around the sandbox. If you're fortunate enough to win the right to purchase a house, you must pay the full amount up front within a specified time. Of course, if you lack sufficient gold, Gringotts will gladly offer a loan. So they gather the funds first, and then start building those houses, Luna mused, her gaze fixed on Professor Blaine, who seemed to have everything meticulously planned. Would anyone really be willing to do that? Those who own property already have their villas and estates, don't they? Atticus tapped the edge of the expansive sand table with his fingers, a broad smile on his face. You don't understand the mindset of the wealthy, Luna. They'll be eager to invest in this new magical city. I suspect many affluent foreign wizards will go to great lengths to secure the purchasing qualification. Admiring the plan like a piece of art, Atticus considered the input from high-ranking Ministry of Magic officials. The new Diagon Alley will transcend being just a wizard commercial street and a chaotic industrial area. It will become a modern, multifunctional magical city featuring a new Ministry of Magic building, residences for ordinary people, high-end villas, manors, wizard business centers, office hubs, industrial parks, magical creature nature reserves, magic hospitals, and a grand Quidditch arena. Atticus paused, his eyes alight with passion as he surveyed his masterpiece. His voice resonated throughout the office. Luna, trailing behind him, watched with a sense of awe. An unexpected thought crossed her mind. Despite Voldemort's resurrection disrupting the peace of the British wizarding world and altering the lives of countless wizards, Professor Blaine remained focused on a grander vision. In truth, Luna felt that the courage and foresight he exhibited rivaled even that of Professor Dumbledore. Of course, we mustn't overlook the practical challenges, Atticus continued, his excitement tempered by a gentle smile. The construction of this magical city won't happen overnight. Even with the full support and cooperation of the Ministry of Magic under Minister Bones, it will likely take another 20 to 30 years. Atticus, unconcerned with appearances, carried on with his vision. Atticus Blaine perched on the edge of the sand table, his expression one of patient understanding as he regarded Luna. While the future holds promise, we must remain mindful of the challenges we currently face, he said, his voice calm and reassuring. Luna, sensing the weight of the moment, tore her gaze away from the sandbox. She knew it was time to voice her thoughts, but where to start? A whirlwind of events raced through her mind. Taking a deep breath, her eyes momentarily lost focus as she gathered her resolve. Professor Blaine, she began, her voice steadying, I encountered Lucius Malfoy tonight. End of this chapter. Chapter 1171, Selection of New Professors. You saw Lucius Malfoy? Atticus Blaine repeated the information Luna had provided, his tone measured and deliberate. Please continue, Luna. Luna was taken aback by Professor Blaine's reaction. She had expected him to be alarmed or at least surprised. After all, meeting Lucius Malfoy at such a sensitive time was significant. Yet, Professor Blaine's purple eyes remained as inscrutable as the ancient starry sky she had often gazed upon through her telescope in astronomy class. Yes, Professor, Luna replied, adhering to his request. Tonight, in the village of St. Catchpole, at Mr. Senna's home. He's a local, living with his wife Ewan and their 6-year-old daughter. They make a living through farming and odd jobs. I encountered Lucius Malfoy there. His appearance had changed, but I recognized him from Hogwarts. You recognized his magic, didn't you? Atticus inquired, his tone calm and knowing. He was well aware of Luna's unique talent. Ordinary human transformation techniques could not escape her perception. Luna nodded, her silver eyes wide as she recounted the events. Atticus listened intently, his expression serene, though a flicker of concern crossed his face when Luna mentioned Lucius Malfoy and an unknown wizard sneaking into her house. However, his smile soon returned, full of admiration for Luna's cleverness. Her decision to rush into John Senna's house to assess the situation was a bit rash, but her overall response was nearly flawless. It was rare for a young Ravenclaw, not yet in her 4th year, to exhibit such adaptability and clarity of thought. Of course, Lucius Malfoy's disguise could not be overlooked. I believe Lucius Malfoy and his companion may be using the villagers to plot against the Ministry of Magic. The villagers are in danger, unaware of the threat, so I came to you, Luna explained. Only you can help them. Atticus pursed his lips thoughtfully. So, what do you think I should do, Luna? Luna was caught off guard by the question. She hadn't expected Professor Blaine to turn the question back on her. You or the Ministry, she hesitated. Sending aurors to protect the villagers might be a good idea. You don't understand why these two individuals targeted these impoverished farmers, Luna, Atticus said, shaking his head slightly. Removing them from the conspiracy might only lead others into misfortune, which won't solve the problem fundamentally. Atticus stood up, gently patting Luna on the shoulder, and led her out of the office. They entered the elevator, and Atticus pressed the button for the floor, leading to the reception hall. As they stepped into the grand hall of the Ministry of Magic, Luna, still in a daze, struggled to comprehend. I don't understand, Professor Blaine. John, Ewan, Bona, and the other villagers of St. Catchpole need protection, Luna insisted. As you describe it, Luna, Atticus replied, smiling at the wizard guarding the elevator hall before his expression turned serious. Those villagers are not in immediate danger. The Ministry's intervention could bring them unforeseen risks. But Luna's voice wavered with emotion for the first time that night. She stood before the fireplace, her silver eyes reflecting the flickering green flames. Are you going to ignore it? That's right, Luna. Atticus raised his hand, halting her protest. If we were at Hogwarts, I would commend you for your quick thinking tonight and for coming to the Ministry to help those villagers. But there's not much more I can share with you about this matter. Atticus Blaine gently nudged the dazed Luna into the fireplace. Before she vanished, he raised his index finger to his lips and smiled serenely. I am not entirely ignorant of these matters. Before Luna could inquire further, Professor Blaine's face disappeared in the swirling world. Sighing softly, Atticus shook his head and smiled enigmatically, then turned and made his way back. As the elevator ascended, the cold draft from the shaft invigorated the slightly weary Atticus. The elevator halted at the basement level. Upon stepping out, Atticus did not return to his office, but headed to the minister's office to facilitate communication and self-monitoring. Amelia had a habit of leaving her office door open when she wasn't entertaining visitors or discussing confidential matters with internal officials. As Atticus entered her office, he noticed Amelia, with pronounced dark circles and heavy bags under her eyes, sitting behind her desk, sipping a potion. Glancing at Sirius, who was curled up on the sofa in front of the marble fireplace, sleeping soundly after recovering from his injury, Atticus shook his head with a smile. Oh, don't blame him, Atticus, Amelia said, unsurprised that Atticus had not slept in the latter half of the night. A great magician like him would only have more energy. He knows there won't be any major issues here while you're in the ministry, so he took a break. Following me is indeed a tough job. Perhaps I should consider giving Sirius more bonuses. Amelia chuckled softly, keeping her voice low. He wouldn't care about a little gold, Atticus replied, his nose twitching slightly as he eyed the glass bottle in Amelia's hand. As for you, Amelia, although time is scarce, you still need to balance work and rest, he advised sincerely. If you had succumbed to the Death Eater's elaborate schemes and ended up as a minister, they would have laughed their heads off. Amelia held her forehead and smiled bitterly. She felt dizzy, and the mental tonic she had just consumed seemed ineffective. It seems I do need it. Oh. A flash of insight suddenly pierced her foggy consciousness. Amelia raised her head and frowned slightly. Are you suggesting that Voldemort's Death Eaters are plotting again, and you've received word? Rather than saying the Death Eaters planned it, it would be more accurate to say that Atticus himself had induced the Death Eaters to devise a plan that would ultimately lead to their own downfall. His face remained calm as he pondered this. I did hear some rumors, Amelia. The Death Eaters are planning to incite another riot. Therefore, you must ensure you have enough energy to handle any crisis that may arise at any moment. But after the Battle of Diagon Alley, Voldemort's power was significantly weakened, wasn't it? Amelia frowned. According to the secret sentries we've stationed at the border, a large number of unidentified individuals have smuggled out of the UK and show no intention of following Voldemort. Consequently, the security of the wizarding world has improved recently. I think he should be unable to launch a large-scale riot in the short term. I think so too, but we can't afford to be complacent, Atticus replied, withholding his plan from Amelia. This wasn't a deliberate concealment, but rather an effort to avoid unnecessary disputes. Hogwarts is about to start, Amelia, and I must allocate some energy to manage the various matters related to the start of the school year. And you, Atticus said solemnly, must pay more attention to our own security. Oh, yes. Amelia adjusted her monocle and smiled weakly. Hogwarts is starting. I almost forgot about that. So, Atticus, I seem to have heard that Dumbledore has entrusted that difficult problem to you? The look of helplessness on Atticus Blaine's face made Amelia, who was usually preoccupied with trivial matters, burst into laughter. Have you chosen anyone yet? Oh, perhaps you could try inviting Alastor again. Unless a miracle happens, I doubt he would agree, Atticus replied, shaking his head with a sigh. However, I do have a tentative idea about potential candidates for the course. Who are you thinking of inviting? Amelia asked eagerly, her excitement palpable. Even Sirius, lounging on the sofa, opened his eyes groggily. It's still too early to say, Atticus responded with a cryptic smile. End of this chapter. Chapter 1172, A New Beginning. At 12 Grimmauld Place, the gentle sunlight filtered through the intricately carved window grills, casting a warm glow on two boys scribbling furiously at their desks. The quill scratched across the parchment, filling the room with the rapid rustling of their writing. Despite the ache in his wrist, Harry dared not pause. He held his breath, focusing intently. His green eyes weren't fixed on the words forming beneath his quill, but rather on the remaining space on the parchment. He wrote with vigor and muttered softly to himself. Ron, seated beside him, mirrored his intensity. The old clock on the wall ticked faithfully, marking each passing second. When the hour hand reached 10 o'clock, Harry suddenly dropped his quill, leapt from his chair, and raised his hands triumphantly, as if he had just won a Quidditch match. In contrast, Ron looked as though he had suffered a great loss. With reluctance, he pulled Harry's parchment towards him and scanned it. Confirming that Harry's essay met Professor Binns' required length, Ron let out a dramatic wail and collapsed onto the table, as if his spine had been removed. Hand it over, Ron. No cheating. Harry's grin widened at Ron's theatrics, showing no sympathy. He extended his hand towards Ron. For you. Ron let out an exasperated cry, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a handful of coins. He picked out a galleon and returned the rest, given to him by Sicko, Nat, and Professor Blaine, to his pocket. This galleon should have played a more important role, Ron lamented, placing the coin in Harry's palm with a look of resignation. I'll admit my defeat, Ron, Harry said with a grin. It's just one galleon. No need to lose your composure. At that moment, the door swung open, revealing someone they had anticipated seeing today. Yet, when she appeared, both boys were taken by surprise. Before Harry could express his astonishment, the girl at the door rushed over and embraced him tightly. Oh, it's only been 2 weeks, Hermione, Harry said, feeling the warmth of her hug. The joy in his heart far surpassed the satisfaction of winning a galleon from Ron. He hugged Hermione back with equal warmth. Next, it was Ron's turn. Hermione beamed and gave Ron a warm hug, dispelling the slight tension on his face and brightening his smile. How was the tour, Hermione? Ron asked, grinning as he looked her over. The girl before them wore a Muggle-style light blue halter dress adorned with floral patterns, and her slender, fair feet were clad in refreshing sandals. She seemed eager to see them. Hermione had yet to remove the straw hat with a white silk ribbon tied into a playful bow. Perhaps due to the abundant sunshine, her skin had a slight tan, which only enhanced her beauty. Harry and Ron were surprised to notice that in just 2 weeks, Hermione seemed taller. Ah! Hermione's face radiated a smile as bright as Harry and Ron's. She glanced around the room, her nose wrinkling slightly at the less-than-ideal surroundings. But then she exhaled with pleasure. My parents took me to Dijon. It was beautiful, but the weather was much drier than in London, and I struggled to adapt. But enough about that. How's your summer homework coming along? Already done, Harry replied quickly. Almost, Ron added, both boys moving simultaneously to hide their history of magic papers, hastily completed in a speed contest. Around the fireplace, ready to travel to Diagon Alley. The room was filled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Atticus Blaine, who had been quietly observing the group, couldn't help but smile at their camaraderie. Don't worry, Ron, Atticus said reassuringly. You'll do just fine in your owls. Besides, a new robe might just bring you some good luck. Ron grinned sheepishly, appreciating the encouragement. Thanks, Atticus. I hope you're right. As they prepared to leave, Hermione continued to chatter excitedly about their upcoming school year. I can't wait to see what new things we'll learn, and I'm sure Professor McGonagall has some surprises in store for us. Harry nodded, sharing in her enthusiasm. Yeah, and maybe we'll finally get a decent defense against the dark arts teacher this year. Let's hope so, Ron added, adjusting his robe one last time. I'm tired of having a new one every year. With a final glance around the room, Mrs. Weasley ushered them towards the fireplace. All right, everyone, let's get going. We don't want to keep the others waiting. One by one, they stepped into the green flames, disappearing with a whoosh. As they traveled through the Floo network, Atticus couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. Despite the challenges they faced, he knew he was part of something special, a group of friends who would stand by each other, no matter what. Arriving at Diagon Alley, the bustling street was alive with witches and wizards going about their business. The familiar sights and sounds filled them with a sense of excitement and adventure. First stop, Gringotts, Mrs. Weasley announced, leading the way. We need to get some money before we start shopping. As they made their way through the crowd, Atticus marveled at the vibrant displays in the shop windows. From spellbooks to potion ingredients, Diagon Alley was a treasure trove of magical wonders. Look at that broomstick, Ron exclaimed, pointing to the latest model on display. I bet it's faster than anything we've ever seen. Harry's eyes lit up with interest. Maybe one day, Ron. But for now, let's focus on getting what we need for school. With a shared sense of purpose, they continued down the cobblestone street, ready to face whatever the new school year had in store for them. Together, they knew they could handle anything. The room buzzed with lively chatter in front of the fireplace, yet everyone wore a smile, as if the start of the school year at Hogwarts had ushered in a wave of happiness. To Harry, it felt reminiscent of the Olympic Games, where all conflicts were set aside for this significant occasion. Come to think of it, wasn't Gringotts destroyed in the war, Mrs. Weasley? Harry asked, watching Fred and George leap into the fireplace ahead of him. The thought struck him suddenly, and he turned to Mrs. Weasley, who stood at the end of the line. Before the war, during a visit to Diagon Alley, he had deposited his competition prize money into his vault. Carrying such a large amount of gold would have been far too conspicuous. It was the first time since inheriting the vault that he had added to it rather than withdrawn from it. But Gringotts held all his assets. If he lost them all at once, he would have no choice but to borrow money from Sirius. Oh, don't worry, dear. Those vaults are deep underground and were not affected by the war. Gringotts will compensate for any losses to individual vaults. Mrs. Weasley reassured him with a smile. I don't trust goblins anymore, Harry muttered under his breath before stepping into the fireplace. End of this chapter. Chapter 1173, Diagon Alley. After the war. Harry returned to Diagon Alley, his nostrils twitching as he caught the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air, a haunting reminder of the recent war. Like Fred, George, and Ron, who had arrived at the ruins earlier, he glanced back at the fireplace he had just emerged from. It was similar to the fireplaces embedded in the walls of the Ministry of Magic's reception hall. The Ministry had constructed a half-mile-long, 10-foot-high wall leading to the industrial area, with fireplaces built into the wall, serving as gateways for people entering Diagon Alley. Harry stepped aside to make room for Hermione, Ginny, and Mrs. Weasley, who were following closely behind. The ground beneath his feet was not the familiar cobblestones of Diagon Alley, nor was it concrete or slate. Instead, it was simply compacted debris. The Ministry of Magic clearly lacked the resources to fully restore the devastated Diagon Alley in such a short time. The compacted area was limited to the drop-off platform where they stood and a road leading straight into the wilderness. Beyond that, the area remained in ruins. Broken supporting pillars jutted skyward, silently testifying to the war's intensity and cruelty. "Diagon Alley," Ginny murmured, her voice barely audible. The Weasleys and Hermione were equally speechless. Seeing the destruction in person was far more impactful than any photograph in the Daily Prophet. Only Harry, who had witnessed the battlefield firsthand, seemed somewhat dazed. "Don't just stand there in a daze, everyone. People are still coming out behind you." A wizard wearing a green armband approached, shouting to get their attention. He pushed through the crowd, making his way toward them. "Oh, sorry," Harry apologized, noticing the armband with Public Order Management written in silver on a green background. He assumed the wizard was hired by the Ministry of Magic to maintain order. Harry nodded in apology and pointed to the sides of the avenue where wizards were climbing over the ruins, occasionally using their wands to cut through crystalline stones. "Excuse me, are those people the shop owners here?" Harry inquired. The young wizard, with short brown hair and freckles as numerous as Ron's, glanced at the people clambering over the ruins. "Only a few of them are," he replied dismissively. "Most are scavengers hoping to find something valuable." "Scavengers?" Ron squinted at the well-dressed individuals and shook his head. "They're better dressed than I am, Harry." Ron suddenly became animated. "Maybe we should try our luck. There might be some good things buried under the ruins." "I don't think that's necessary, Ron," Harry replied quietly. "If you had seen Professor Atticus Blaine's battle with Voldemort, you'd know there's likely nothing left." The security warden, accustomed to people gawking at Diagon Alley post-war, was growing impatient. He directed Harry and the others to line up at the exit of the drop-off platform, guiding them through a passage flanked by 2 rows of fences. Conversations about Diagon Alley after the war buzzed around them like the hum of bees. Harry and his friends listened intently to the discussions about the war and the state of the British wizarding world's commercial center. Surprisingly, most people were optimistic. Perhaps it was the Ministry of Magic's firm stance against the enemy and the Daily Prophet's repeated praise for the war's victory that fueled this optimism. Everyone seemed to believe that the Ministry of Magic, supported by Amos Stark, would lead them to a brighter future. Albus Dumbledore had managed to maintain control over the situation on a grand scale. "You know, dear, it's fortunate he was there," remarked a lady adorned with a bowler hat festooned with colorful feathers. She spoke openly to her companions, unconcerned about being overheard. "I had been considering leaving London for a while, but after the war, I wasn't too worried. A friend of mine, a reporter for the Daily Prophet, was hiding in the rice field nearby, at the time. He told me that you-know-who didn't gain any advantage from him from start to finish. They were at least evenly matched, and Dumbledore hadn't even joined in yet." Harry and his friends exchanged knowing smiles, fully aware of whom the lady was referring to. Some of the opinions about Diagon Alley surprised Harry even more. "Honestly, nothing has changed here since I was born," exclaimed an elderly lady with a cane, her gray hair tied in a bun, reminiscent of Professor McGonagall, as she spoke to her equally aged companion. "Now this is a bit novel," Harry chuckled. "Oh my goodness, does she really think Diagon Alley is nice now?" "Of course not," Hermione disagreed with the old lady's sentiment. She gazed in awe at a marble pillar embedded in the ground, its outer contour spanning 4 or 5 feet. This pillar clearly belonged to Gringotts, yet the original site of Gringotts was still several hundred feet away. It seemed likely that it had been blown here. "The most important reason people can remain optimistic is that they know the Ministry can't just leave Diagon Alley like this." Harry nodded in agreement with Hermione. "Hey, it's you." As they exited the platform passage, someone waved and greeted them. Harry, Ron, Hermione. The surrounding crowd immediately turned their attention to them, causing Harry to quickly lower his head in embarrassment. "Ernie?" Only Ron seemed unfazed, happily waving to his Hogwarts classmate. "Are you here to buy something too?" "Of course," Ernie replied, running over to greet everyone again. "I came here with my mother. She was buying me a robe over there. I got a bit bored, so I decided to take a walk." Ernie said excitedly, pointing to the nearby ruins, trying to contain his enthusiasm. "Isn't this amazing? It's all Professor Blaine's doing. Oh, what a pity. Our PE classes will end next semester, and we're not old enough to take the Newts course in PE." Before they could respond, Ernie continued. "Hogwarts is about to start. I'm thrilled. I can finally watch Quidditch games this year. There are a few vacancies on the Hufflepuff team. I'm planning to persuade my mother to buy me a flying broomstick and try my luck. Harry, you'll still be Gryffindor's seeker, and Fred and George won't be changing either. So, what about you, Ron? What are your plans?" Wood graduated, didn't he? Ron's heart raced as he bit his lip and muttered. Harry nodded. "I guess Angelina will be the captain of Gryffindor. With Wood leaving, we'll need a new goalkeeper." Ron turned to Mrs. Weasley with hopeful eyes. A flying broom was expensive, and Mrs. Weasley frowned slightly. "A sweep will do, Mother. No need for a nimbus or firebolt," Ron pleaded. "Oh, you're still dreaming of a firebolt." Mrs. Weasley smiled at Ron's pitiful expression. "Well, I don't see why not, Ron. After all, it's your money. You can go pick out a broom." Ron hadn't been this excited all summer. Ernie still needed to try on robes, and Harry and the Weasleys needed to visit Gringotts to withdraw money, so Ron and Ernie agreed to meet later at the Quidditch boutique to look at brooms. They officially entered the post-disaster Diagon Alley neighborhood, where merchants had set up magical tents along the road paved by the Ministry of Magic. A large banner displaying the original store name was draped over the top of each tent. Atticus Blaine and his companions were delighted to discover that most of the original shops were still operating. As they wandered down the street, they admired the uniquely shaped tent shops lining both sides of the road. It felt reminiscent of being at a campsite during the Quidditch World Cup. "It's quite amazing," Ginny remarked, echoing Harry's sentiments. "I think it would be wonderful to retain this feature even after Diagon Alley is rebuilt." End of this chapter. Chapter 1174, Encounters in Diagon Alley. Ernie wasn't the only classmate they encountered in Diagon Alley. Many young wizards from Hogwarts were there, shopping with their parents on the weekend before school started. Among the familiar faces, they spotted their roommate Siamus and the twins' good friend, Lee Jordan. After Harry exchanged greetings with Finch Fletchley from Hufflepuff, he turned and noticed Cho Chang entering the owl shop, accompanied by an elegant, Asian-looking man. Instinctively, he shrank back, only to find Ginny and Hermione eyeing him with mild disdain. Gringotts, the tallest building in Diagon Alley, stood out even when replaced by a tent. Despite the change, it remained the largest among the tents. A notice at the entrance read, "Due to the Battle of Diagon Alley, many cracks have appeared in the underground vault, which is currently being repaired. For the safety of our valued customers, all customers who wish to withdraw cash must have Gringotts staff go to the underground vault to withdraw the money on their behalf. Gringotts will continue to safeguard the wealth of all our valued users. Thank you for your cooperation." Hermione read the notice aloud. "That makes things easier, doesn't it?" Ron shrugged, nonchalantly. "I'd rather eat booger-flavored Bertie Bott's every flavor beans than ride in a Gringotts cart." "Oh, you're disgusting, Ron." Ginny rolled her eyes at him. Despite the tent's attempt to mimic the grandeur of Gringotts Hall, the space felt cramped. As they moved slowly with the crowd, Ginny found herself pressed against Harry, her face flushed. The softness against his chest and the tickle of her hair under his nose made Harry feel as if he were under a spell. Even Cho Chang's gentle face, which had momentarily distracted him, faded from his thoughts. "Speaking of which, Harry," Ron began, oblivious to Harry's distraction. He was watching a wizard at the counter, haggling with a goblin over rubies as red as embers. After some negotiation, the goblin retrieved an exquisite wooden box from beneath the counter, spilling a pile of galleons onto the table. Ron eyed the wizard enviously as he inspected the gold coins. "I never knew how much gold your parents left for you." Hermione looked surprised and gently chided Ron. "That's Harry's privacy, Ron. You shouldn't ask that." "Oh, it's okay, Hermione." Harry replied, recalling the wealth in his vault. To be honest, I'm not sure, Ron. I've never counted it, probably tens of thousands. Even Fred and George couldn't hide their envy. To facilitate withdrawals, the goblins had moved several large boxes of gold to a small room behind the hall, adopting a system of redeeming first and recording the accounts. Soon, Harry had enough gold to last him the entire school year. Holding a heavy bag of gold was always satisfying. During his 2-month stay at Grimmauld Place, apart from a trip to the Ministry of Magic for a trial, a visit to St. Mungo's to see Mr. Weasley, and a quick trip to Diagon Alley, Harry had spent most of his time there. This summer, he had only wandered around the square near the old house. He was eager to go out and spend some money. However, Mrs. Weasley faced a small issue while withdrawing funds. According to the list of books Hogwarts sent, you don't need to buy any new ones, which saves money, but you all need new robes and some materials. Ginny's. The cauldron can't be used anymore, so you'll need a new one, Mrs. Weasley said, counting on her fingers. I can buy it myself, Mom, Ginny replied thoughtfully. I haven't spent much of the prize money I won from the competition yet. Oh, dear, that's your money. You should save it for something else. It's your father's and my responsibility to buy your school supplies, Mrs. Weasley said, looking at Ginny lovingly as she ruffled her thick red hair. This tender moment made Ron feel indignant. While Mrs. Weasley was negotiating with the goblin, he turned to Hermione, who was raising her eyebrows and crossing her arms, and complained, Why do I have to spend my own gold to buy a broom, and I have to apply for it in advance? It's simple, silly, George chimed in, imitating Mrs. Weasley as he ruffled Ron's hair with a grin, because there isn't enough gold in Mom and Dad's coffers for you to squander. Surprisingly, Hermione withdrew a full 1,000 galleons from her account. To do so, she had to spend several more galleons on a special purse from the goblin to hold the gold. What are you going to do, Hermione? Harry asked, surprised as he watched her weigh the purse. Oh, this is my business, Harry. Don't ask any more questions, Hermione replied, slightly unkindly. Their last collective activity was visiting Madame Malkin's robe shop. As if sensing that these teenagers needed some freedom, Mrs. Weasley generously allowed Harry and his friends to explore on their own, while she took Ginny to buy a cauldron. Fred and George vanished in an instant. Hermione wasn't particularly interested in Ron's broom shopping, and as Harry had expected, she disappeared into the Flourish and Blot's tent, ignoring them. Let's go, Ron said anxiously, dragging Harry toward the Quidditch boutique. I've wasted so much time. Ernie must be waiting for me. They spent much longer in the Quidditch boutique than anticipated. Harry quickly restocked his broomstick maintenance kit with some essentials, but Ron was torn between the Sideswipe and Comet series. He enlisted Ernie's help to make a decision. By the time Ron emerged from the boutique, satisfied with his first proper Quidditch broom, the sun was high in the sky. Ernie then parted ways with them. Ron suggested they celebrate his new broom with a butterbeer at the Leaky Cauldron. Harry agreed, and they searched through the numerous tents until they found the one for the Leaky Cauldron. Like most shops, it was rebuilt on its original site, but the portal connecting to the Muggle world was destroyed. How's business, Tom? Harry asked, familiar with the owner of the Leaky Cauldron, having once lived on the second floor of his bar for nearly a month. Oh, Mr. Potter, is that you? Tom replied. The tent was brighter than the original bar, with a few guests, mostly parents with children having lunch. The original charm of the Leaky Cauldron was gone. Tom was wiping glasses behind the bar, looking bored. The sunlight that followed Harry and Ron into the tent made old Tom squint. As soon as he recognized Harry, he stepped out from behind the bar to greet them. Well, as you can see, business has plummeted, Tom said, after exchanging pleasantries. His face fell as he gestured toward the food the guests had ordered, looking dejected. In this terrible world, most people aren't willing to stay out for long. So, now no one comes here to drink. Those who do come just eat something and leave in a hurry. To be honest, I really miss my old bar. The Ministry of Magic has informed us that it will take at least another 6 months before we can return to the original Diagon Alley, Atticus Blaine lamented. That's actually quite fast, Ron interjected. Remember last year's Quidditch stadium? It took hundreds of Ministry employees half a year to construct it, They certainly can't spare that many people right now. The real issue is, Harry added, his concern evident as he glanced at old Tom, does the ministry offer any compensation for your losses? End of this chapter. Chapter 1175, Plan and Encounter. It depends on the situation. Old Tom warmly invited Harry and Ron to sit down. After serving them 2 bottles of butterbeer and stoat sandwiches and ensuring no other customers needed his attention, he settled at their table to answer Harry's questions. As you know, most of the businesses in Diagon Alley are renting their premises. The land here actually belongs to some wizards with real status and position. The Ministry of Magic is negotiating with these landowners, offering them a choice. Harry, with his mouth full of sandwich, mumbled, "What?" "It's no secret now," old Tom said enthusiastically. "The Ministry of Magic has a plan for this place. It's said to be led by Mr. Blaine. They intend to expand the area based on the ruins of Diagon Alley and transform it into a magical city that can accommodate more wizards." Ron, momentarily distracted from his newly bought broom, looked at Tom with curiosity. "A magical city? You mean, like a Muggle city?" "That's top secret, Mr. Weasley. I'm afraid only senior officials in the ministry know the full details," Tom replied, smacking his lips with a hint of regret. "But there's no doubt that land in this magical city will be more valuable than it is now. The ministry has negotiated with the wizards who lost land in Diagon Alley, promising them a shop of the same size for free in the new city. Alternatively, they can choose to receive compensation in galleons based on the previous land value." The concept of a magical city intrigued Harry. He pondered for a moment. "I guess most people will choose a new shop?" "That's right," old Tom nodded. "However, the ministry seems to prefer that they opt for compensation in galleons. They don't want these valuable assets concentrated in the hands of a few." Old Tom also explained the compensation plan for merchants who rented shops. Before the Battle of Diagon Alley, nearly all merchants had moved their goods, and the ministry would compensate any remaining losses in gold. With wealth confiscated from wealthy pure-blood families and significant investments from goblins, the British Ministry of Magic currently lacks nothing in terms of gold. In addition to monetary compensation, the ministry has exempted affected merchants from taxes until they receive new shops in the Magic City's commercial district. These policies have encouraged merchants to take risks and rebuild their businesses swiftly. "If I were you, Harry," old Tom returned to his own business. Harry and Ron, now satisfied, chatted over their drinks. Ron remarked with some regret, "Once that great magical city is built, I'll take out all the gold in the vault and buy a shop here. I heard my father talk about the value of land in Diagon Alley. He said the galleons he earned from a lifetime at the ministry wouldn't be enough to buy a shop here." This was indeed a tempting idea, even for Harry, who had never been particularly focused on making money. However, after some thought, Harry shook his head. "If Mr. Weasley can't afford it after a lifetime at the ministry, then there's a good chance I won't have enough gold in my vaults either. Besides—" Harry paused, Amelia's face flashing in his mind. "Sirius wouldn't mind if I lived in Grimmauld Place, but I can't stay there forever, right? I need to have my own house." Ron wanted to respond, but the conversation was interrupted as the door swung open, and a familiar figure entered the pub. Atticus Blaine was always in high spirits when discussing ways to make money. However, his enthusiasm was abruptly halted when 2 figures entered the tent, causing Ron to fall silent immediately. "Ah, Mrs. Malfoy and Master Malfoy!" Old Tom hurried over from the other side of the bar, adopting a much more deferential demeanor than he had shown to Harry and Ron moments before. Bowing his head, he asked, "What can I do for you two?" "Prepare something to eat for us. We are in a hurry," Narcissa Malfoy replied coldly, not even sparing old Tom a glance. Her eyes scanned the bar, scrutinizing each tab, lay of patrons with a frosty gaze. The 2 wizards who had entered were unmistakably from the Malfoy family, exuding an air of elegance and aristocracy. They appeared to be mother and son, and their presence was enough to make many guests avert their eyes and focus intently on their meals, eager to avoid any confrontation. Draco Malfoy seemed lost in thought, his indifferent gaze fixed on the floor. He didn't notice the attention he was drawing until his mother's grip on his shoulder tightened, pulling him from his reverie. Turning his head in confusion, he finally noticed Harry Potter staring at him with an expressionless face, accompanied by Ron, his ever-present companion. The two groups locked eyes, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Harry's eyes were cold, and a fire of anger simmered within him. Despite a relatively peaceful last school year with Draco, free from the usual taunts and pranks, the animosity in Harry's glare was as intense as ever. The recent war had left deep scars. Kingsley had lost a leg, Emmeline Vance, always gentle and polite, was gone, and Daedalus Diggle, who had always greeted him with excitement, was no more. The memories of bodies covered with white sheets at St. Mungo's and the grieving families of the fallen haunted him. Voldemort and the Death Eaters were to blame for these tragedies, rendering past conflicts with Draco insignificant in comparison. Ron shared Harry's hatred as he looked at Draco and his mother. His father had narrowly escaped death in the war, and the Malfoys' presence only fueled his resentment. Harry had expected Draco and Narcissa to respond to their open hostility, given the Malfoy family's notorious reputation. Yet, to his surprise, Draco avoided his gaze, his face unusually pale, reminiscent of their encounter at Gringotts before the war. Narcissa's expression was not one of disdain, as it was for others in the bar, but rather one of fear. Harry understood why. At the end of the Battle of Diagon Alley, Voldemort had attempted to kill him, but Harry's wand had acted of its own accord, defeating the Dark Lord. This event hadn't been publicized, but the Malfoys, as Voldemort's followers, must have known. Narcissa likely believed Harry possessed some extraordinary power. In truth, even Ron, Hermione, and the Wizards of the Order of the Phoenix still believed that Harry had single-handedly vanquished Voldemort, a feat even Professor Blaine couldn't achieve that day. End of this chapter. Chapter 1176. Tracking Harry assumed that with the arrogance typical of Malfoy and his son, they would simply leave upon seeing them. Narcissa's behavior aligned with his expectations. "Shall we go somewhere else, dear?" she asked, glancing back at her son. "No need, Mom," Draco replied, surprising Harry. He looked at Harry intently, ignoring the hostile glares from Harry and Ron. Speaking softly, he led his mother to a table a bit further away and sat down. Old Tom quickly served lunch to the mother and son. Despite the shabby setting of the tented bar, the Malfoys displayed impeccable dining etiquette. Harry and Ron exchanged glances, choosing to remain silent and refraining from further provocation. The once pleasant meal had lost its charm. They sipped their butterbeer listlessly, their eyes fixed on the Malfoys. Narcissa seemed aware of the scrutiny from the two young Gryffindors, but chose not to acknowledge it. "Eat quickly, Draco. We have more shopping to do later," Narcissa urged. Draco, having taken only a few bites, seemed lost in thought, staring at his kidney steak. Noticing this, Narcissa reminded him, but instead of resuming his meal, Draco set down his knife and fork. He retrieved a handkerchief from his suit jacket, which accentuated his figure, and wiped his mouth. "I don't have much appetite, Mother," he said, discarding the handkerchief on the table, indicating he no longer wanted it. "Well, there's no harm in eating less. The food here might not be very clean," Narcissa remarked, her eyes filled with pity as she observed Draco's face, noticeably thinner after the summer break. "Let's finish shopping quickly and head home. I'll have the kitchen prepare some of your favorite dishes." For some reason, Harry's expression grew even colder. Draco showed no reaction to his mother's concern, his gaze heavy and fixed on the table. It wasn't until Narcissa set down her utensils and dabbed at her mouth that Draco seemed to come back to life. "Mom, I want to walk around by myself later," he said. "Alone?" Narcissa's frown deepened, her tone firm. "No, Draco. Have you forgotten your father's instructions? He wants you home as soon as we're done shopping. It's not safe to linger outside for too long now." "Heh, I think the wizarding world is quite safe as long as there are no Death Eaters around. What do you think, Ron?" Harry interjected, making no effort to hide that he was eavesdropping. His sneer was audible throughout half the bar. "You're right, Harry. Some people just love to cry thief." Ron chimed in, uncharacteristically assertive. Faced with such direct provocation, the Malfoys finally reacted. Narcissa cast a glance at Harry and Ron, her expression akin to that of an adult dealing with unruly children, which only served to irritate them further. Draco's face darkened with a hint of malice. In his earlier years, he he might have flipped the table and drawn his wand. This time, however, he merely glared at Harry and Ron before helping his mother to her feet. They tossed a few gold coins on the table, ignored old Tom's apologetic smile, and left the bar without responding to the taunts. As the tense curtain parted, sunlight streamed into the bar, causing Harry to squint involuntarily. When did Malfoy become so tolerant? Ron wondered aloud, watching the pair disappear behind the curtain. Maybe he's worried that Professor Blaine will come after him once school starts, Harry speculated, but Atticus Blaine shook his head after finishing his thoughts. Whether it was Professor Blaine or Professor Dumbledore, neither would harbor anger towards students simply because their parents were Death Eaters. It seemed more likely that Theodore Nott and the Greengrass sisters harbored resentment towards Professor Blaine. Their fathers had suffered during the Battle of Diagon Alley. Greengrass had been confirmed as a Death Eater and was now a wanted man, while old Nott had fared even worse, being the first Death Eater captured and imprisoned following Voldemort's resurrection. "I always feel guilty," N said bluntly. "If it were me, I wouldn't have the face to come to Diagon Alley. It's because of them that this place has become like this." The rest of their lunch was spent discussing why Draco had become so humble. The two of them denounced the countless crimes of Voldemort and the Death Eaters. The frequent mention of Voldemort from Harry's mouth scared away many patrons. Seeing this, old Tom had no choice but to step forward and remind them to be mindful of their impact. Realizing they had become unwelcome guests, Harry and Ron lost interest in staying at the bar any longer. After settling their bill, they left. "Where do we go next, Harry?" Ron asked. Standing at the bar's entrance, the bustling street before them was even livelier than before. Harry hesitated. They still needed to stock up on new textbooks and potion ingredients, but he had no desire to do that just yet. Malfoy's recent odd behavior lingered in his mind. He felt that Malfoy was either troubled by something or plotting something. "Oh, it's him," Harry muttered. Just as he was pondering Malfoy's strange behavior, the curtain of Madame Malkin's robe shop across the street suddenly opened, and Malfoy hurried out. He looked a bit nervous, glancing back at the shop a few times. After ensuring no one was following him, he merged into the crowd and quickly moved away. "It seems Malfoy has finally gotten over his mother," Harry remarked to Ron with a meaningful look. "What do you mean?" Ron asked, but to Harry's relief, he quickly grasped the implication. What is Malfoy planning to do behind his mother's back? Ron also seemed to understand Harry's intentions. He looked at Harry cautiously. "You plan to follow him and see. But Harry, you can't use the disillusionment charm like Hermione, can you? Unless you bring." Harry had already pulled a storage bag from his robe pocket. After rummaging through it, he found what he was looking for. Under Ron's astonished gaze, he smiled and slowly drew out his invisibility cloak. "Remember when I broke into the battlefield from St. Mungo's? Ron, Hagrid told me then that unless I was at Hogwarts, I should never forget my invisibility cloak." "But," Ron hesitated, "what Malfoy wants to do is none of our business, right, Harry? I know you're worried about whether he will." "I'm sorry, Ron," Harry interrupted. "It wouldn't be safe for both of us to hide under the invisibility cloak. We might be discovered." He quickly donned the cloak. "You can go find Hermione first and tell her about the situation. I'll bring you good news." With that, Harry stepped forward, nudging aside a few wizards blocking his path, and vanished completely, leaving Ron standing in front of the leaky cauldron with a roll of his eyes. It wasn't difficult to track Malfoy, who was hurrying down the street with a clear purpose. Harry soon spotted him, striding forward with determination. He followed Malfoy almost to the end of the bustling street. Near the wilderness, the tent shops were scattered about, and Harry continued his pursuit. On both sides of the avenue, the tents were not arranged neatly. Instead, they appeared haphazardly scattered. In some areas, as many as 5 or 6 small black tents were crammed together. As Atticus Blaine arrived, he noticed the street was nearly deserted. He glanced back cautiously, and seeing nothing out of the ordinary, he swiftly slipped into a low black tent. Harry awoke with a start as the curtain fell behind him. He tore his gaze away from the dark golden letters spelling Borgin and Burkes on the door. As the curtain continued to sway, He wrapped his invisibility cloak tightly around himself and ducked into the tent. End of this chapter. Chapter 1177, Malfoy's Request. It had been quite some time since Harry had experienced such a fright. He had just crouched down and followed Malfoy into the tent. Before he could take a proper look at what Borgin and Burke's, a store known for selling dark magic items, had become, he was met with Draco's confused gaze, his gray eyes filled with suspicion. Had he been discovered? Harry, feeling a tingling sensation on his scalp, squatted awkwardly by the door, too afraid to move. Was it possible that the wind had lifted the invisibility cloak when he rushed in, giving Malfoy a clue? Or was there another reason? Harry pursed his lips, watching Malfoy nervously. From his angle, it seemed as though Malfoy was looking directly at him. However, Harry soon realized he hadn't been discovered. Malfoy's gaze was indeed in his direction, but his eyes were focused on something behind him. The few seconds of silence felt like an eternity. Fortunately, Malfoy did nothing. His eyelids fluttered, and then he silently turned and walked further into the store. Harry exhaled subconsciously, quickly covering his mouth as he realized his mistake. Glancing behind him, he immediately understood what had aroused Malfoy's suspicion. When he had entered, he had inadvertently brushed against the curtain, causing it to swing more than usual. Malfoy was more alert than Harry had anticipated. A chill ran through Harry's heart, prompting him to be even more cautious. As always, the store's merchandise was anything but respectable. Withered human hands, blood-stained playing cards, human bones of various shapes, and magical instruments exuding an ominous aura. These items made Harry feel queasy. Mr. Borgin was clearly not as generous as the goblins at Gringotts or most shopkeepers in Diagon Alley, and the makeshift tent he used was much narrower than his shop in Nocturne Alley. The path leading to the counter was filled with the clinking of objects, and as someone who had been here with his father more than once, Draco knew that if you didn't fully understand anything related to black magic, you shouldn't touch it. Draco leaned sideways, carefully navigating the narrow passage until he reached the counter and rang the bell. "Ah, isn't this Master Malfoy?" A hunchbacked man appeared from nowhere, smoothing his greasy hair with his hands before speaking earnestly. "You and your father haven't visited my shop for a while. Is he well?" A withered head placed atop the display cabinet emitted a terrifying laugh intermittently. To hear more clearly, Harry held his breath and approached the counter sideways, stopping at a safe distance. "My father is nothing to worry about, Borgin," Draco replied, his face pale and his demeanor cold. "Of course, I don't mind telling you that he is doing well now. Perhaps you've heard some rumors, but I assure you they are all lies." "Something's wrong with Malfoy's dad?" Harry noted this, planning to share the news with Ron and Hermione later. Of course, Mr. Borgin replied with a modest smile. "No one with any sense would believe such rumors. I've always believed your father is the most trusted by that person." Borgin wiped a cold sweat from his brow. The little bastard, in front of him with his gloomy expression, exuded a strong sense of threat. For some reason, Borgin's flattery did not earn Malfoy's trust. Even from more than 10 feet away, Harry could sense the chill emanating from Malfoy. "What kind of garbage is that in your hand?" Draco asked, eager to change the subject. His eyes fell on the tray in Borgin's hand. Inside the glass cover on the tray was a necklace, its style indescribable. It was brass in color, but very dull. There was no doubt. The atmosphere in Borgin and Burke's was tense, the air thick with the weight of secrets and danger. Atticus Blaine, the shopkeeper, was acutely aware of the perilous nature of the item he was handling. As he conversed with Draco Malfoy, his attention never wavered from the tray in his hands, as if fearing the necklace might slip from its wooden disple, a stand. "Oh, you mean this necklace?" Atticus inquired, his smile as slick as his hair. "It is not for sale, Master Malfoy." "Not for sale?" Draco's lips twisted into a mocking grin. "Why?" "Because it is too dangerous, Master Malfoy. Anyone who possesses this necklace could easily kill someone. I prefer to avoid unnecessary trouble. If someone were to die because of it, the Ministry would eventually trace it back to me." Atticus's cloudy eyes gleamed with pride as he noticed Draco's interest in the necklace. "I acquired it at great expense from a foreign wizard. I intend to display it in my shop to showcase the strength of my establishment." You mean it can kill people? Draco narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing the necklace through the glass cover. Harry, hidden beneath his invisibility cloak, felt a twinge of disdain. Even he could see that this greasy-head, hunched old man was using grandiose language to inflate the necklace's value. With all due respect, Master Malfoy, your question insults this exquisite piece of art, Atticus exclaimed theatrically. Even a robust young dragon would stand no chance against it. Draco bent down, examining the necklace closely. Whether it could truly slay a dragon was uncertain, but the aura of danger it exuded was undeniable. Very good, Malfoy nodded, seemingly satisfied. Harry's heart raced beneath the invisibility cloak. Malfoy wanted to kill someone. But who? He strained to catch every word, not daring to miss a single detail. But since it's not for sale, forget it, Draco said, catching both Harry and Atticus by surprise. Atticus had anticipated a negotiation over the price, but Draco's response was unexpected. Oh, Master Malfoy, actually, it's not impossible to negotiate. If the price is right, Atticus stammered, his smile faltering as Draco's unconventional approach caught him off guard. Come on, Atticus, put that thing away, Draco said, feigning disinterest. I have something else to ask you. Defeated, Atticus placed the tray back on the counter and asked respectfully, I am at your service, Master Malfoy. After a brief pause, Draco looked at Atticus with indifference. Do you have anything here that can be used to open a lock? Unlock? Harry's brow furrowed in confusion. Unlock it? Atticus echoed, surprised by the request. Do you mean for a door or a safe? It's not that difficult, is it, Master Malfoy? If you need to open a lock without a key, I suggest the unlocking charm. The incantation is Alohomora. Of course, I know the unlocking charm, you fool, Draco snapped impatiently. But that spell only works on ordinary locks. The door I need to open is protected by powerful magic. In such cases, the charm is useless, isn't it? Draco glared at Atticus with intensity. I need something that can break the magical protections on the lock without leaving a trace. Do you have any recommendations? End of this chapter. Chapter 1178. Do you have to meddle in other people's business? If Malfoy had purchased the necklace that old Borgin was so eager to sell, Harry might not have been so perplexed. But Malfoy wanted Borgin to sell him a lock-picking tool? What was Malfoy planning? At that moment, Harry's mind began to race. Instinctively, he recalled the door that had occasionally appeared in his dreams over the summer. Ever since he had witnessed Voldemort and the Muggle janitor that Cleona had killed last summer, along with the subsequent glimpses of Voldemort, Harry was absolutely certain that what he saw was real. Behind that mysterious door, located somewhere unknown, there was clearly something that Voldemort was deeply concerned about. It was inconvenient for Voldemort to go there himself, so had he sent Malfoy instead? Harry narrowed his eyes slightly. The more he thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. You need a tool that can break powerful protective magic. It wasn't difficult to deduce from old Borgin's embarrassed expression that he didn't possess such a treasure. However, as a businessman, he couldn't directly admit to such a shortcoming. I have indeed seen such alchemical instruments. The two eyeballs in old Borgin's shriveled eye sockets spun rapidly, much like Moody's magical eye. Have you seen? Malfoy exclaimed in surprise, his worry evident. You have it here. Show it to me. I'll buy it, no matter the cost. Old Borgin suddenly felt relieved. He tried hard to straighten his hunched back, and his flattering smile became more composed. Of course I have, Master Malfoy. I have some personal channels, some masters who are well known in the industry. Oh, but I don't have any goods at the moment. Are you teasing me, Borgin? Draco's face immediately darkened, a dangerous glint flashing in his eyes. Oh, how dare I tease you, dear Master Malfoy? Old Borgin protested his innocence. Since you have a need for this kind of item, you should know that each piece of equipment with special functions is very expensive. Generally speaking, if the customer does not specifically need it, I will not take the initiative to purchase it. It would tie up too much of my funds. Harry watched old Borgin's performance with interest. His curiosity piqued. An alchemical tool that could break various defensive magics and open locks. It seemed he had one here. If what you say is true, Draco eyed old Borgin suspiciously. If I need a custom piece, how long will it take? 1 month. Old Borgin, anticipating this question, blurted out the answer, but then he hesitated. But as I just mentioned, invitations to those masters are required. I'm afraid you'll need to pay a deposit. Otherwise, if the product is good, but you don't need it, my shop may not be able to bear such a loss. Borgin rubbed his hands together and smiled smoothly. 1 month. This time frame didn't seem to satisfy Malfoy, but after a moment's hesitation, he nodded. All right, how much do you want for just 1 month? The deposit is 500 galleons, and you'll pay another 1,000 galleons upon delivery. Old Borgin's eyes sparkled as he spoke without hesitation. Then, Harry witnessed the wealth of the Malfoy family. Malfoy tossed a purse onto the counter. Here is 1,000. If your product satisfies me, I'll give you another 1,000. But if you dare to cheat me... Malfoy stepped closer, glaring grimly at old Borgin, whose smile had become strained. I will make you pay dearly. Seeing old Borgin wiping the sweat from his forehead and patting his chest in assurance, Harry knew it was time for him to leave. He was trapped in the only path leading to the counter and the curtains, and he had to leave first, otherwise he would be in Malfoy's way. Boom! A strange noise suddenly echoed through the dark shop, drawing Draco and old Borgin's attention. Focused intently on Draco, his mind racing to find a way out of this predicament. The large black cabinet, now a distant memory, seemed to loom ominously in his thoughts. Atticus Blaine, the professor who had taught him so much, would surely have a clever solution to this situation, Harry mused. Draco's wand remained unwavering, its tip a mere inch from Harry's nose. The tension between them was palpable, a silent battle of wills. Harry's mind flashed back to the moment he had first slipped into the shop, his heart pounding with the thrill of discovery. Now, that thrill had turned into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. You're not as clever as you think, Malfoy, Harry said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. You might have caught me off guard, but that doesn't mean you've won. Draco's smirk widened, his eyes glinting with a mix of triumph and disdain. Oh, Potter, always so full of bravado, but this time you're out of your depth. Harry's gaze flickered to the invisibility cloak in Draco's hand, a symbol of his vulnerability. He had underestimated Draco, and now he was paying the price. But he couldn't let fear paralyze him. He needed to think, to strategize, just as Atticus Blaine had taught him. Why are you so interested in what I'm doing, Potter? Draco's voice was a low, dangerous whisper. Is it just your insatiable curiosity, or is there something more? Harry met Draco's gaze, his expression defiant. Maybe I just don't like seeing people get hurt because of your family's twisted schemes. Draco's eyes narrowed, his grip on the wand tightening. You think you know everything, don't you? But you have no idea what's really going on. The air between them crackled with tension, each boy unwilling to back down. Harry's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tables. He needed to get out of this situation, to warn Ron and Hermione about what he had overheard. Suddenly, a noise from the street outside broke the standoff. Both boys turned their heads, momentarily distracted. It was the opportunity Harry needed. With a swift, practiced motion, he flicked his wrist, and his wand slipped into his hand. Expelliarmus! Harry shouted, his voice ringing with determination. Draco's wand flew from his grasp, clattering to the ground. Harry seized the moment, stepping back and raising his wand defensively. Looks like the tables have turned, Malfoy, Harry said, his voice steady and confident. Draco glared at him, his expression a mix of anger and frustration. This isn't over, Potter. Harry nodded, his eyes never leaving Draco's. No, it's not, but for now, I suggest you stay out of my way. With that, Harry turned and sprinted down the street, his heart pounding with adrenaline. He needed to find Ron and Hermione, to share what he had learned and figure out their next move. As he ran, he couldn't help but think of Atticus Blaine and the lessons he had imparted. In this world of magic and danger, knowledge and quick thinking were his greatest allies. Atticus Blaine wanted to slap himself twice. He had made a mistake he should have avoided. The ground of Diagon Alley was now packed earth, not cobblestones. I see you haven't learned much from Professor Blaine, Malfoy, Harry said, maintaining a stern expression despite his slight embarrassment. When has he ever allowed us to use the skills he taught us to threaten others? And Harry's eyes flickered with intensity. I doubt Professor Blaine taught us to engage in petty theft, What are you planning to do with those alchemical tools for picking locks, Malfoy? With the wealth of the Malfoy family, surely you don't need to resort to thievery, do you? End of this chapter. Chapter 179, Riots Reemerge. The moment Malfoy lifted his invisibility cloak, Harry knew today would be challenging. He stared at Malfoy, noting the slight tremor in his wrist, while his peripheral vision scanned the surroundings. After a moment, Harry's heart sank. Borgin's shop wasn't on the main road, cleared by the Ministry of Magic, but hidden behind several tents. The tents blocked the view from all directions, leaving the confrontation between the two unseen by passers-by. Even if someone happened by, Harry couldn't count on them being friendly. It seemed he could only rely on himself. Harry thought, feeling the weight of the situation. Malfoy must have guessed he was trying to find a way out of trouble, so any sudden move would prompt Malfoy to act decisively. Although Harry's threats to involve the Ministry of Magic weren't baseless, he knew Malfoy well enough to realize that wouldn't scare him. Malfoy wouldn't dare to harm or kill him, but he wouldn't hesitate to humiliate him publicly. What to do? Could he count on Malfoy's kindness? As soon as this absurd thought crossed Harry's mind, Malfoy's actions left him stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief. Draco looked deeply at Harry, whose gaze remained defiant, and then slowly lowered his wand. Under Harry's surprised gaze, he tucked the wand back into his sleeve. He dropped Harry's invisibility cloak at his feet, and as he backed away, said, "If you didn't hear me, Potter, I can say it again. You'd better change your bad habit of meddling in other people's affairs." Seeing Malfoy retreating 10 feet away and having indeed put away his wand, Harry, who had been tense, finally breathed a sigh of relief. "That's going to be difficult, Malfoy. I won't be able to sleep until I know what you're up to," Harry said. "Then, please help yourself," Draco replied, a strange light flickering in his light gray eyes. "But I have to warn you, if I catch you trying to follow me at Hogwarts, you'll be in real trouble, Potter." Is Malfoy really going to let this go? No, Harry snapped back to reality. Malfoy wasn't feeling guilty. He was likely afraid that if he attacked, Harry would report his actions to the school. This only confirmed that whatever Malfoy was planning was crucial to him. "Wait, Malfoy," Harry blurted out, stopping Malfoy in his tracks. "You're after an alchemical item that can break magical defenses, aren't you?" Malfoy, who had reached the alley's entrance, halted. He looked at Harry gloomily, saying nothing. "Oh, what a coincidence. I seem to have something that fits your needs," Harry said slowly, watching Malfoy's expression change. "Maybe you should ask if I'm interested in selling it. At least I'm not like Borgin, who cheats and deceives." Rumble! A sudden rumble interrupted Draco, who was about to issue another warning. Both he and Harry instinctively looked up at the sky. But the bright blue sky and shining sun revealed that the sound wasn't thunder, but something else entirely. There! Harry quickly spotted the billowing smoke rising in the distance, and the panicked shouts reaching his ears made his face pale. "It seems your father's associates have no intention of living peacefully anymore, right?" Harry swiftly drew his wand, pointing it at Malfoy, his eyes bloodshot. "Not them. They have no plans to attack us again," Draco said instinctively, then realized his mistake. Atticus Blaine immediately fell silent, sensing the gravity of the situation. Malfoy, equally curious about the unfolding events, momentarily forgot about Potter and dashed back towards the dirt road. "Don't run, Malfoy. Explain what's happening," Harry shouted, deftly picking up the invisibility cloak with his toes and sprinting after him. The thunderous roar had ceased after a single ominous boom, leaving only the terrified screams of the crowd. Atticus and Malfoy raced towards the downtown area, but their progress was soon halted by the throng of panicked people. On the street, sharp cracks echoed as wizards who could apparate vanished to escape the danger. Those unable to perform this magic were like sheep fleeing a predator, running in the opposite direction of the thunder towards Harry and Malfoy, desperate to avoid the threat. The chaotic footsteps and the sound of apparitions stirred up clouds of dust on the dirt road, resembling a sandstorm. The dark yellow haze and the surging crowd made Draco and Harry's faces pale. Instinctively, they huddled together at the side of the road. Harry spotted the elderly couple he had seen earlier at the drop-off platform. The old lady had been admiring the newness of Diagon Alley. "Excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me what's happening over there?" Harry asked urgently, stopping the breathless couple. "We don't know," the old lady shrieked, her voice high-pitched with fear. "When that strange noise sounded, people started shouting that the Death Eaters were coming again. We just followed the crowd to save ourselves. Children, I suggest you leave here quickly too." With that, the spirited old lady broke free from Harry's grasp, supporting her nearly fainting husband as they fled. Harry's frustration mounted as he grabbed Draco's collar, anger simmering within him. But before he could demand answers, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "Let go of him, Potter." It wasn't Draco who spoke. A woman emerged from the frantic crowd and slapped Harry's hand away with surprising force. Harry winced, not expecting Malfoy's mother to possess such strength. His hand throbbed as if the bones were bruised. "Where have you been, Draco?" Narcissa's trembling voice betrayed her fear at having lost sight of her son. "We'll talk later, Mom," Draco replied, unfazed by his mother's anger. "What happened over there? I heard someone mention Death Eaters." "That's none of your concern," Narcissa panted, gripping Draco's shoulders. "We're leaving now, and you will explain to your father and me where you've been." Harry rubbed his stinging hand, watching helplessly as Malfoy and his mother vanished into the crowd. People continued to flee towards the open fields. Behind the tents lining the dirt road, wizards in standard robes mounted their broomsticks, flying grimly towards the source of the disturbance. Whatever had happened was significant, and the sight of those broomsticks whizzing by confirmed it for Harry. Realizing he wouldn't get any answers from the fleeing crowd, Harry recalled the last time he had recklessly charged into danger, Hagrid and Sirius's reprimands echoing in his mind. Determined, he bit his lower lip, swiftly donned the invisibility cloak, and maneuvered around the back of the tents. He stepped over the uneven ruins, heading directly towards the chaos's epicenter. A sense of panic filled the air, yet many chose to remain where they were. Among the throng of people obstructing his view, Atticus Blaine soon spotted Ron. To his surprise, Ron was not accompanied by Hermione. Instead, Ron had bumped into Lavender and was now holding her arm, standing on tiptoe and craning his neck to see what lay ahead. Thanks to the invisibility cloak, Atticus was able to ignore the curses and complaints of those he pushed past as he hurried to the front of the crowd. With a swift motion, he pulled off the cloak, revealing himself and startling Hermione. However, Atticus didn't pause to apologize. The scene before him was so shocking that his expression immediately darkened. End of this chapter. Chapter 11 and 80. Public resentment boils over. The drop-off platform at Diagon Alley was in utter chaos. The wall that once separated the bustling street from the old industrial area had been demolished, leaving bricks and debris scattered across the ground, with smoke and dust hanging heavily in the air. In front of Harry stood about 20 Ministry of Magic enforcers, stationed throughout Diagon Alley to maintain order. They had drawn their wands, their faces tense as they confronted the crowd responsible for the upheaval. "Who are those people?" Hermione asked, her voice tinged with disbelief, seemingly unfazed by Harry's sudden appearance. She covered her mouth, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. "At least they're not Death Eaters," Harry replied, though his expression was grim. An uneasy feeling gnawed at him. The wall, which stretched several hundred feet, hadn't been blown apart by magic, but had been physically torn down. A glance revealed a mass of several hundred people, their attire reminiscent of the villagers Harry often saw in Hogsmeade. "Did you notice, Harry?" Hermione's voice was tight with concern. "None of them are wearing wizard robes." "Yes," Harry swallowed hard, scrutinizing the faces of those at the forefront. "If a wizard wanted to riot, they'd use a wand, not a poker or a hoe." The crowd around them buzzed with murmurs, echoing Harry's thoughts. It seemed these people, who had dismantled the wall, were not aligned with the Death Eaters or the Dark Wizards from the Battle of Diagon Alley. "What do you plan to do with these useless squibs?" A derisive voice reached Harry and Hermione's ears, prompting them to turn towards the speaker, a wizard with a sneer on his face. "Do I need to explain?" another wizard whispered. "They're just trying to cause trouble. The Ministry of Magic has destroyed their livelihoods. It's nonsense to think they can challenge the Ministry with the backing of Blaine and Dumbledore. Even you-know-who couldn't manage that." "Well, If the ministry has ruined their jobs, they should at least be allowed to voice their grievances, the first wizard quipped, eliciting laughter from those around him. The onlookers seemed to relax, entertained by the exchange. Harry and Hermione exchanged a somber glance. The ministry destroyed their jobs, Harry said, his breath quickening. I don't understand, Hermione. Why? Don't ask me, Harry. I don't know, Hermione replied, biting her lower lip, her brown eyes clouded with worry. What do you think the ministry will do, Harry? Will they arrest them? Harry had no answer. Under the watchful, varied gazes of the crowd, some worried, some mocking, others angry, the workers from the industrial area began to move. They didn't charge aggressively at the enforcers in the square. Instead, they flowed like a disorganized torrent through the gap in the wall they had breached, slowly advancing towards the commercial district. What are they going to do? Hermione's voice rose in alarm. Harry understood her concern. She feared the enforcers, who were whispering and exchanging glances, might retaliate against the civilians. Suddenly, a firework shot into the sky, bursting into a bright, inconspicuous flower under the sunlight. One of the enforcers had fired a warning signal, hoping to halt the protest, but the attempt failed. The protesters hesitated momentarily at the sight of magic, then resumed their determined march forward. From Harry's vantage point, the Ministry of Magic's enforcers, seasoned by past experiences, seemed unsure of how to handle this unprecedented situation. The baptism of war left many feeling panicked, even though their opponents were merely a group of clumsy wizards who couldn't manage a simple levitation spell. What on earth do you want to do? One of the strikers finally shouted, an idea suddenly occurring to him. He pointed his wand at his throat, using magic to amplify his voice. By this time, more than half of the black-clad protest team had already stepped onto the drop-off square, forcing the attackers to the edge. We want to see Bones. Let Blaine out. The vanguard of the protest team finally broke their silence. Their scattered shouts merged, echoing above the ruins of Diagon Alley. You want to see Minister Bones, Mr. Blaine? The striker's voice tightened. This is wishful thinking. They are both very busy and have no time to meet with you rioters. Rioters? Harry frowned, and Hermione shouted angrily. How can he say that? These people are not the same as Death Eaters, are they? To their surprise, the voices of agreement around them were dominant. Who do they think they are? You know who. Some laughed loudly, mocking the protesters for overestimating their capabilities. The strikers' words only fueled the fire, and those in the protest team who were already fearful became enraged. Harry could see the anger flashing on the dark faces of the civilians in the front row. The protest team advanced again, now occupying the drop-off platform. The 20 or so Ministry of Magic strikers were pushed to a position not far in front of Harry and his friends. Ministry, you guys are not afraid of a bunch of squibs, someone in the crowd shouted, making Harry's anger rise. He turned to find the source of the shout. Hey, show them what you can do, the man shouted again, and Harry quickly identified the troublemaker. Shut up! If you dare to cause trouble again, I'll teach you a lesson. Harry yelled at him. The breeze lifted Harry's bangs, revealing his lightning-shaped scar to many onlookers. Harry Potter. Look, it's the one who defeated the mysterious man. Yes, it was him. My acquaintance in the ministry told me he was in the previous battle of Diagon Alley. The respectful looks did not please Harry. He turned away gloomily, enduring the murmurs around him. They've gone to the ministry to call for backup, Harry, Hermione said, holding his arm and looking worriedly at the tense drop-off platform. Do you think we should do anything, Harry? Harry was troubled. This was not the same as fighting a dark wizard. The protest team grew more excited when they saw the ministry's strikers leave, knowing the two who left were not going to invite the Minister of Magic or the most powerful wizard of the time. Boom, 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 boom. The angry protesters began to take more violent actions. These ordinary villagers, wielding farm tools and iron implements from workshops, started beating the ground rhythmically. We have to work. We want income. We want to live. Ministry of Magic, stop your tyranny. Bones, go away. Fudge, come back. The angry shouts were deafening and shocking. The wizards who had come to watch the spectacle could no longer laugh and began to retreat. Harry, Hermione, Ron and his girlfriend were pushed forward by the crowd, and he rushed to them, pulling Lavender along. "Hello, Harry and Hermione," Lavender greeted nervously, her face pale. For Ron's sake, Harry and Hermione smiled at her, then turned their grim faces back to the drop-off platform. "Ministry of Magic lackeys, get out of here!" The tense atmosphere between the two groups was palpable. The tension between the two sides reached its peak. At the forefront of the protest group, a frail villager suddenly stepped forward and hurled a bottle at the strikers. Armor protection! The strikers, their senses heightened and alert, were ready to defend. The team leader, a striker with a commanding presence, stepped forward and deflected the bottle with a magic barrier. Boom! The dark brown bottle shattered with a loud explosion, drawing everyone's attention. The liquid sprayed into the air, hissing as it hit the ground, and the rising white smoke made Atticus Blaine's breath catch in his throat. Damn it! This act infuriated the strikers from the Ministry of Magic. They raised their wands, poised to retaliate. "Wait, don't do that! They're just civilians!" Hermione, realizing that a violent clash was imminent, couldn't hold back any longer. She rushed forward, shouting in an attempt to prevent the conflict. End of this chapter.